Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm running a little bit behind. How does the mic sound? Does it sound the exact same or does it sound any different? Good, fine, normal. Okay, good. Yeah, I didn't change anything other than my cord. Actually, hold on. Okay. I'm gonna have to work on that stand some. Anyways, hope everybody's doing good today. Let me get the tweet out and we're good to go. Again, sorry for the delay here. Okay. Tweet is live. Do me a favor, chat. Go give it some love. And we should be good. I'm on YouTube today instead of Twitch. That's no problem, Roxas. All right. Grab you guys today's artwork. Thing is nice and golden. How are you doing, Wodas? Here's today's artwork. Go give the artist some love. And we are finally off to the races. So, chat, you guys have the Barbatos raid coming out in like... basically like 3.5 hours. It should be around 11. What section do you need to finish to do the raid? It's not a section. It's basically you have to like get to the point where Rongo Miniad appears and then have done all the remembrance quests that are required to unlock it. There's 4 different ones. They're all white, and it should be pretty easy. Actually, maybe 5. I don't remember. Yeah, I think it was 4, then a 5th one. I'm going to raid very long. I have work tomorrow, and I'm worried it'll be dead before I get home at 6 p.m. It shouldn't be. It should last for, I believe, about 24 hours. Do you have a favorite events from the ones on the poll? Well, we'll cover that today. Y'all always jump the gun. like, hey, today's stream is about boom, and then like somebody asked me like in the first like 5 seconds in which I'm live, and I'm like, I'm not gonna answer that question. How long do we expect the raid to last? It's basically like 24 hours. Like the Korean raid, but 1 turning instead of 3. Yeah, I think you guys will find the Barbatos raid to be a lot better. You'd have to wait through his death moans, but it is what it is. Darth, thank you for the Prime. Thank you for the 5 months. Space Cowboy, thank you for the 7 months. Chop, who resubbed 11 hours ago in the middle of the day, thank you for the 62. Again, I hope everybody else is doing good today. Gotta get Ocean Flyer back. Understandable. Alright, we're gonna turn that on at the risk of everything else. I get to experience death moans again? Yes. As you want. The oh. I still, chat, it's been like 5 years and I still have it in my head. Thoughts on the Samurai Remnant units collab section. So we'll talk about that too in a bit. Just remind me and I'll go over it. But like essentially everybody was asking me this weekend about it because I was on doing D&D and playing with Trubs. We had the Sunken Land collab this weekend, which you know, I had played a little of it beforehand and I actually like wasn't the biggest fan of how it worked. But playing with Trubs, having that second person to play with, just made it like that much better. So I was way more okay with it. Ilia's getting her first ever performance in this raid for me. Nice. Do you think they should add some old event season to Da Vinci on a monthly basis? I mean, they have already added like 2 rounds of that, and I think that's good, and I think they just need to keep doing it. Minos, ooh, you're 1 month away. How's it going, buddy? Yeah, can we get some love for Minos? At least Burning uses my emotes. SMH chat. I don't know if they'll win though. We'll see, right? I have some interesting points. Jesus, that emote. I don't use emotes. I see how it is. Don't like my emote. I mean, they add something cool and get something reran. I use your emotes, you nerd. Use them right now. I don't believe you. Yeah, you get 2 votes. And I will go through, like, at least my logic for it. Fun to resub with Prime. Oh no, please don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to bait anyone into actually subbing to me. I completely understand the people that, actually no. I can still give even the people that don't sub to me shit, because all of my emotes are basically on Better Twitch TV, and 7 TV, so you guys should have the capability of using either. Those on the YouTube side of things, though, unfortunately, I have not figured you out yet. That is on my to-do list. Now that we have changed the year, I don't know what to roll with LB7 banner. Should I go for Nito Alter or Kukulkan? I would stop at MP1. That's up to you. It really depends on what you need in an account. I'll be rolling both. Like, I like both those units, but I know that's not an option for a lot of people because it requires you to have saved. You have enough time to save for both, but I think a lot of people will probably end up rolling at, like, Anniversary in summer, so it'd be what it be. Elfire, thank you for the 29. The monthly reminder didn't interrupt the stream for once. Nice. So what Kat is saying is Marie Alter has a chance again? No. No, Chad. Even if you get a rerun, like, I'm gonna tell you this flat out right now. Do not expect, like, anything new on a rerun. Like, you know how you guys are going through the rerun right now that's getting extra story and shit? Yeah, that's nice. Don't expect them to ever do that again. Like seriously. Just don't expect it. What Kat is saying is that I won't get a vote. That is absolutely true. That is not what I'm saying. Dear God, that art? Yeah. I'm more happy they're even mentioning reruns at all. I mean, it tells you that they at least hear the community. Like, whether or not they choose to listen, they at least hear us. Because, like, look, guys, devs are people too, okay? Even if there's no official way to, like, contact them and yada yada yada, you don't think they don't read, like, social media? You don't think there's not, like, the occasional dev on Reddit or in Discord or something like that? Obviously. Like, some of the devs play their own stuff. Not every dev, unfortunately, but some of them do. Also, chat, I would like to point out, behold my JP account here, okay, has achieved niceness. Like, I just want chat to understand that. In fact, for the ultimate meme, I need to, like, get my AP to 69 points and be sitting at exactly, like 69 or 6 out of 9. Like, and then somehow get my course down to 69 as well. Really, Kat? I thought devs were all anal sphincters. No, I mean, the devs can probably be anal about certain things, but that, no. Kat knows because you work for a single. No, I do not. I always laugh at that line of reasoning because it's like, obviously it's a joke, but it's like, there are times that I wish I did, right? Like, there are times that I just wish that they had another, like, brain in there to help them, but at the same time, like, I still assume that behind the scenes the issue isn't having the right brain power or anything like that. What's your opinion on the Fate Route remake? Happy. I'm not really convinced it will happen. Because we're already getting Mihoyo and Strange Fate. It might not happen. That something like that, memester, might not happen until, like, maybe like the 25th year or something like that. So it is possible that we get nothing this year. I hope they do, though. I really do hope they do, because I think it's like, I think the Fate community just keeps tearing itself apart over the lack of an actual Fate route, and I think that's kind of the issue. Like, chat, it would be the equivalent of like doing all the Harry Potter movies except the first. Like, except the first book, or like the same thing with like Chronicles of Narnia, or like doing the Lord of the Rings without doing the Hobbit, right? Like, you can't leave out the first because the first is like where everyone's supposed to begin, type deal. God, you would just be doing their taxes? Nah. Would you want to see a live action Fate movie or series? No. Is SR Bork? Did very well, maybe. Got NP6 of Feistium for Reigns. Took 410 courts in total. Is that normal? For Reigns? Yeah, that's not that bad. Like, the fact that you got NP6 of Feistium is actually really good. Is usually you only average about like one. I think it's about like one every 100 to 150 for an SR. So usually I say it's around 100, but yeah, I know they're making a Zelda live action movie. I can't wait to see the horrificness that it is. And I once heard a fellow content creator of mine who is older than me say that eventually you live long enough to see everything from your childhood destroyed. And I understand that on a spiritual level nowadays. Like, all of my favorite IPs from my childhood, Star Wars, Zelda, like they're all getting destroyed. It's sad but true. And it's, ironically enough, it's my own generation that's destroying it. Like, because they're like, oh my god, do you guys remember Zelda? I love Zelda. Let's make a live action. And it's like, anyone that actually loves Zelda would be like, no, don't do that. Oh yeah, Star Wars is absolutely getting destroyed. I still think they can turn around Star Wars, but it's going to require Disney to have to pull its head out of its ass, and I don't think Disney will. Yeah, also in the news chat, I don't know how many of you guys saw, but apparently YouTube is like clogging the like feedback on like basically your browser's performance whenever you use ad blocker. Like it's a proven thing now that YouTube is doing this, and they're doing it on purpose. And I'm like, also, by the way, chat, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I think I have like a burst blood vessel in my eye. So hopefully I'm far enough away that you can't see it, because it's kind of disturbing looking. Thank you for the 100 bits. All I have to say is this all live action anime, and 90% of all video game adaptations are all fucking ass. Yeah, I mean, like, I think half the reason the video game adaptations are usually because like the script is bad more than anything. Like yeah. Y'all remember how we had the like writer's strike and everything this past year? I didn't care. And the reason I didn't care is because the writing in Hollywood cannot get worse than it already is. Like, we legitimately get stuff that is just absolutely bungled all the time. And it's like, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's like, what are you going to do? Replace the entrenched writers with some new ones? My God, you might actually get some new ideas and some, like, fresh takes on things. You might actually get some quality content out of people. So it's like, interestingly enough, I was almost like I'm all for like people like, you know, getting their just desserts. Like if if they're getting mistreated by their industry, sure, right? Like they absolutely need more concessions. But at the same time, I'm also like, I don't really care because I've long felt like the writing for a lot of shows and movies is just garbage nowadays. They have to force feed the message in movies. Yeah. And I think this is a very natural response to that sort of thing. Is like people just being like, yeah, I don't care, I'm not gonna watch. If they do the Fate Route remake, it'd be better as a movie. I don't know about that, and the reason why I say that is because one, I think Zero and Unlimited Blade Works hold a special spot in the Fate community, and two, I think Heaven's Feel, as much as people like that route, I think the Heaven's Feel movies were animated well and were paced awfully. And I can only attribute that to the fact of they had way too much to cover for what amounted to 6 hours of time. And that's where I'm going to say a show would do better. I feel bad for the people that really wanted to see Heaven's Feel get animated because way too much was like cut out of it and like chopped up. So everyone has to watch ads. Yeah, like I don't want to sit there and like shit on the Heaven's Feel movies, but like I said, I have not read the Heaven's Feel route and I got lost during the movies because there are several points where they jump and assume you know something, and I had to like turn to my friends and ask them what the fuck was going on because I did not know. And that was kind of my issue with it. Is like there are ways that you can cut stuff out but still kind of quickly explain that people understand it. Movies do this all the time. The Heaven's Feel movies unfortunately didn't do that when they needed to. We get the next in 2 months. I think that's the only movie I'm excited for this year. Wait, sorry, for which one? Yeah, exactly. Wait, is Dune in the next 2 months? Is it already coming that fast? I thought Dune wasn't until like the end of the year. Yes? Sweet. Awesome. Maybe I'll have a treat myself day since I have no one to go watch Dune with. Like, I could go watch it with my parents, but my parents, like, haven't seen the first one and would probably find it weird. So maybe I just go to the movies alone in the ultimate act of, like, sadness. Are you looking forward to the Dragon's Dogma 2 release soon? No. Not no in the sense that like I have no interest in playing it. No in the sense that what I've seen on the game so far doesn't have me feeling good about it. So it's like I hope to see more, but I'm not looking forward to it at the moment. You can make Fate pawns though. Like maybe, right? Like I know people really like Dragon's Dogma, so I'm hoping that the second one holds up, right? I was thinking it's okay to go to the movies alone. I do too. I think the problem would be that like the movie theater that I have in my town is ass, and like I would rather actually go treat myself. Do it enough times and it ceases to bother you. Yeah. Go with a girl. That's usually how I go to the movies, and this is definitely like one of the reasons that I haven't been to the movies. If someone tries to talk during Dune, I'd be so fucking pissed. Listen, chat, the last movie that I went to with a girlfriend was the what was that? God, I can't think of it. Not wait, was it No, not. It was oh yeah, it was the Venom movie with Tom Hardy. I went to go watch the Venom movie, and it was pretty good from what I remember. And the reason I say from what I remember is like watching out of the corner of my eye as I just like made out with her the whole movie. So it was what it was, but like I had to like go back and rewatch it after the fact. Chat, our poor boy. Yeah, like I said, I just usually do, like, to me movies are a social thing. They're about the experience. So like usually I go with someone, right? Like for instance, I got to go see that like Power Rangers movie like where they like redid it years ago, and the only reason I went to watch it because I was not a fan of like Power Rangers growing up. I had friends that did, and I knew at least, you know, the obvious like social tropes about it, but like I had never seen anything Power Rangers really. And the only reason I went is because like my work buddy dragged me to it because he didn't want to go alone. He's like a mid-30s dude, like being like, bro, I ain't going to Power Rangers. And I was like, fine, I'll go with you, I don't care. So I kind of get it. It's Morbin time, yeah. Movies are the best scene with your bros in a theater, so you can watch football, or you can throw footballs while you watch. I do like the aspect of like going into a movie theater like in the middle of the day when there's no one else watching. I did that a couple of times back in college, where I just had like some free time, and that's usually like a hilarious way to watch the movies because it's like you're actually disturbed when like 30 minutes into the movie, like some random other dude like comes and walks in, and he's like one of only like 4 of you there. And you're like, why did you show up like 30 minutes late to this thing? Like, and like it's jarring enough because like nobody else has come in the movie theater the entire time. So you see like the one dude and you're like I manipulated my friends into watching Dragon Ball Evolution with me. They're no longer your friends, are they? Like they absolutely hate you. That new dude is part of the party now, I guess, yeah. They still are, but they punched me. I don't blame you. Yeah, the only thing I have an issue with is like, with regards to the Fate route, like, I think it would be somewhat difficult for the devs to like, well, really, not even the devs, but somewhat difficult for like the writers to capture the same mystique as all the way back with the original Dean Stay Night, as all the way back with the original visual novel. Because at this point, I think one of the worst kept secrets in all of anime is the identity of Saber. And that is the like main like attraction to Fate route. Is like the mystery there of finding out who she is and like the progression from there. What events did you vote for? I have not voted yet. We're going to go do NA here real quick, though, as Cad's got to spend some stuff down. I'm not worried about the Barbie raids, chat. I actually don't need to farm them too much. We'll be doing it a little bit tomorrow, but that'll be kind of it. So, what if there's a secret 8th servant? I mean, maybe, right? Maz TF, thank you for the follow. What vote on JP? We're going to be voting here in a little bit. Where, at least, chat, how do we do the vote? Like, is it a browser like the whatchamacallit? Like the survey is, or is it like in-game? Is it a browser? Does someone have the link to it? Also, that's rather interesting that in a weird way, it feels like what they're doing there with that is they're using it to replace having an actual survey. Okay, I've got to mute it on NA because otherwise I'll get DMCA'd by YouTube. You need your game ID to vote. Okay. Thank you for the link. Yeah, like I said, I will. And again, like, you guys can go ahead and vote if you want, but if you guys give me a minute, I'm gonna talk with you guys about it as to like what it is we going to do. Okay, so we got Memories of Castle Digest. I have no idea how you say this thing. I still have no idea how you say this thing. Down with me. You wanted it to be. Out of my head, she says. And I wonder. I sing along with you. Be this good. Fandom has the translation of the survey vote. I mean, I can probably figure it out without fandom. The thing I'm trying to do, chat, I have switched, so I'm not using the Game Press guide, but I am using the Game Press farming guide, the quick farming guide that they have, because fandom for this event, usually when there are drops in a node, fandom gives you like the arrows up indicating like this is the better drop. They just didn't with this event at all. So like, yeah, I can see what the node drops, but I have no idea what the major drop is without just guessing. And so as a result, I've just switched back over to using Game Press's cheat sheet, basically, so that I have an idea. So this one's just all silver. We're just going to switch over to Berserkar. Going to get some extra use out of Muchachi. Da, 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 da. Throw gray in there, and then it looks like it's got to be a 2-star, of which I don't. Only Shakespeare. So that would have been ideal had it been him, but it's not. So Bartholomew Roberts. Also, the enemy locator's nice. Yeah, I do really like that. Like, for the majority of the event, I have not had to follow a guide in the slightest. Like, it has only been here towards, like, getting caught up for, like, Barbatos and stuff, where I was like, hold on, I need to make sure. No, let's throw Summer Valks in Evo Shop. Summer 7 was misery to play. I do think, and I'll talk about that, I do think there's some meta choices, but I think people will have to, like, wait and see. At least somewhat. No one wants to vote for the Christmas event that just happened? No, I mean, like, I feel like you're gonna get some fan favorites, is what's gonna end up being the case. Alright, chat, I watched episode 2 of Solo Leveling. It was okay. Like, again, I like where the show is headed, even though it was all pretty much predictable. But it's still got to get some places first. Like learning with manga because I desperately want cranking. Yeah, I think like overall, I think they just need to reproduce the storylines for each event without battles. Okay? Like, just give us the story. And then give us the welfare and give us any missing CEs and command codes in some kind of shop. And we're good. That's it. Like, they don't need to fully reproduce the entire event every time. I think that's like their big issue. But again, I do think that that doesn't just happen, right? Like, that they've got to actually like have the manpower to do that work, and I think that's kind of, as always, the issue holding them back. If solo leveling were called by your name and didn't have the name recognition, I would have dropped it already. I wouldn't have dropped it. I think it's actually interesting. But again, it's like I can already tell it's a slow burn. And this is why I said, like, chat, if you guys are fans of solo leveling, the best thing you can do is tell people that it is a slow burn. Don't try to overhype it. If you try to overhype it, you're going to just make people angry. Because they're going to be like, I don't see it. And they're going to like end up quitting the show. Yes, I have seen the second episode of Chain Soldier. Give us the fights too, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind if they give us the fight. I just am looking at this from the what would be easiest for the devs, but still appease the fan base. And I think as long as you get the story, the welfare, and the C's and command codes, nobody really has any right to complain about anything. You can complain about not having the fights, but at the end of the day, you at least got the story to understand. It's like if they have the manpower to do the fights as well, I'm A-okay with it. Season just started and some people are shitting on anime already, which is sad. Yeah, I think this is naturally going to happen because you had solo leveling, which has been getting hyped since like 4 seasons ago. I'm not even kidding you, chat. Literally over a year ago, we had people talking about solo leveling getting animated, right? So like, this is the same shit that you see in video gaming. The longer the hype cycle, the more people turn against it and want to hate on it. And that's why I said, like, it's up to the fans to be reasonable. If the fans keep trying to overhype it, it's just naturally going to fall. I was hearing hype way before a year ago. Oh, probably while it was in manga form, right? Like, and that I think is okay. The only thing I'm pointing out is like the actual anime production has been getting hyped for over a year. So that kind of is your big idea to like slow down. Last movie I went to was Detective Pikachu. I just don't like movies. I love movies. I love going to the movie theater. I think it's a fun experience. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't blame anyone for not wanting to pay the outrageous costs when you can literally just sit at home and watch it for much cheaper. I think this is also why, like, chat, if you guys have ever looked, like, the cost of paying for a movie versus the cost of renting a movie is not so different anymore. And that's where I just go, like, okay, cool, I'll just buy it. But at the end of the day, I am quickly coming around to the concept of piracy. And I don't necessarily want to say, like, oh, yeah, you guys should always pirate everything. But I'm sorry, when you're like, hey, purchase this movie digitally where you don't actually own it and we can take it away from you at any time for $20 to $25, or you can rent it for $15, which is equally crazy expensive. I'm just like, all right, your prices are too damn high at this point. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if you offer it cheaper, that's one thing. But yeah, I feel like at that pricing, I become very price conscious of the movie itself. I never understand why cinema is so expensive here in the US. We pay the equivalent of $7 for a place with IMAX. I don't really either. A lot of it is the venue. I think it like costs a lot to keep those places open and staffed all the time. But the reality is that they're probably open like again, like does the movie theater need to be open in the middle of the day while everyone's at work? Honestly, probably not, right? Like that is kind of the issue that you run into is I feel like for a long time movie theaters were operating at a loss because they didn't want to have to like, turn the lights out at a different point or something like that. People here don't want to go to the movies anymore. I mean, I think people still want to go to the movies, but you have two issues. One, economy's not doing so good, and inflation's super high still, and people basically don't want to pay the exorbitant cost for what amounts to a very uh, opt-in sort of leisurely like pastime, right? Like you can just sit on your couch and watch something else. So that price issue is one of the reasons. The second reason is, and I'm going to be frank on this and not get like super political on it or anything, but I think there is a ton of agenda, a ton of like forced narrative pushed down your throat from Hollywood nowadays. And I do think that makes a lot of people not want to go watch a lot of the productions that are getting put out nowadays. So, uh, again, I'm gonna say that at the end of the day, uh, and I always have taken to heart a quote from Michael Jordan. Ironically enough, he was once asked, I don't remember exactly the wording, but it was something to the equivalent of he was asked a political question with regards to like his brand of shoes, right? His Jordans. And his only response was that like basically I think it was something to the equivalent of like Republicans buy shoes too. So he basically just said, I'm not answering your question because you're leading me with a question. And the reality is that like one, who cares what the basically what the athlete's mentality on this is. And two, like why he gains nothing from commenting and just pissing off one side or the other, right? So it's like it's better to just say nothing than to say anything at all, because saying anything is just naturally going to inflame one side. So it's like it's better for his business if he just butts out of it. And I completely agree with that. The same thing goes for Hollywood. You want everyone to go to the movies and watch movies? Stop putting agendas in your movie. It's pretty obvious. And it's like, I feel like, obviously people can say like, oh, well, Hollywood's had its points where it's gone stale. And I think that's just storytelling in general has gotten stale at points. But one of the things that we can look back to that has always worked throughout storytelling throughout all of time, since stories were being told and handed down orally throughout the ages, is that concept of like the hero's journey. Okay, you look at like some of the like oldest stories like Beowulf and stuff like that, and they're largely told in the same format. The hero's journey is a time-tested like format that everybody loves, and it's just told in a million different ways. But we started to get away from that. We started to like go into like weird other tropes and stuff like that. And I talked about this the other day that like I was watching a dude on YouTube and he was mentioning that one of the reasons you guys don't connect with stories so much nowadays is because a lot of stories are just fucking dreary and hopeless. A lot of stories don't deliver the thing that you want, either for the sake of being like, rug pulling and belying your expectations, or just because they want to be edgy, right? And so basically what he was mentioning was this concept of a lot of stories nowadays are told from an entropic standpoint. Everything is unraveling, everything's coming undone, the world is doomed, everything is becoming harder and more shit, right? Whereas you look back at stories of the past and they were told with an anti-entropic mentality. That is, that there is hope, there is a purpose for everything. That, like, yes, it's the journey that matters, and that like you need to keep your head up and keep trying and never give up. And those two levels of story are why you remember stories from your childhood a lot more fondly nowadays than you tend to remember modern storytelling that's coming out in the form of movies and TV shows. Because the movies and TV shows that are getting produced nowadays are all that. They're all the entropic type. The books and the shows and the movies that you watched when you were kids were usually anti-entropic. And that's been something that's happened in the last like 20 years. Like we've started to see that shift. Except anime. I agree with that. Anime certainly, and it's not this concept that you can't have a dark and edgy story. It's the concept that everything is dark and edgy nowadays. And like, yeah, I agree with that. Like anime is one of the few last bastions that's anti-entropic for the most part. And that's why I still watch anime as an adult. No, Barbatos raid should last about like 24 hours plus. I think Hollywood has become too risk averse for a little reason. I wouldn't even say Hollywood's risk averse because obviously Hollywood isn't risk averse. They took some risks and it didn't fucking pay off. Now did it? We are where we are because Hollywood took risks. The problem was Hollywood took the risk. People didn't like the risk. And then Hollywood pulled the goofy meme of "I'll fucking do it again," and it's like, yeah, no, you saw that and you doubled down, and it's like, don't double down, right? Like you should have seen the metrics and been like, hey, that's not a good idea. And to be clear, someone probably did. Someone probably was like, whoa, we shouldn't do that, and they got fired because of it. Because whoever is in charge, whoever wants to set that bullshit agenda that no one wants to see, is ramming it down everyone's throat and just firing anyone else who disagrees with them. So it is what it is. Hollywood blames the viewers every time they flop. Yeah, 100%. When the reality is just like, yeah, that maybe it wasn't the viewer's fault, it was your own. Disney is currently making a sequel to a film they lost money on. At some point, they deserve to die. Yeah, like, I mean, I know, like, here in Florida, we've had a lot of fights with Disney. And, you know, again, that's getting into the political realm and stuff like that. But I can say at least a big reason why a lot of those fights are occurring is because Disney is trying to, like, interfere with Floridian, like, politics and stuff like that. And I'm like, Disney needs to not do that. Like, it's not making the Floridians very happy with Disney right now. And that's kind of the issue that like they're running into, is they're just doing it regardless of the cost. Like, and I've pointed this out before that like I'm all for progress and stuff like that, but I think that that progress for the sake of progress just tramples everyone. And like a lot of these companies are not looking at like what they're doing and the impact it's actually having, either on their bottom line or on like society as a whole. And so like they're sitting there going like, I know we need to do this, and then it just does not work for them. Yeah, I am Swamp Puppy. But it's like, in general, I'm just very much a like laissez-faire type of dude. I'm like, everybody take your hand out of the cookie jar. Stop trying to steal the cookies. Like, basically, you know, leave everybody else alone. Everybody mind their own business type of thing. But people can't do that nowadays. Yeah, I mean, like every movie has an agenda. In all seriousness, right? Like, because even when you look at the anti-entropic storytelling, what was the agenda? Well, the agenda was like persevere, have hope, right? Like, so it was more about like a moral. There was always a moral to the story back in the day. Nowadays, there's not really a moral. It's purely for entertainment value. And I think that's somewhat fine, But I think what I'm finding is that like you see like the morals are basically getting corrupted by things. Usually due to like, I don't know, like the author's like weird fetish or some bullshit. Problem with the writers is that they don't do a good job of relaying the message. I think it's also just a case of, again, like that may be where like the writer strike and everything comes into play in actuality, is like they're constantly overworked and they don't have the time to actually sit down and write it well. Um and then it's like the second they're finally done, they're like, did I do a good job? And they're like, here's your next script, get writing. So like they just have to keep going and going and going and going and going. But yeah, I don't know, right? Like at the end of the day, it just may be something that is not entirely their fault. The writers may be getting told what to write. And if you have that happen, you kind of got issues, right? Night 2 was announcement of the weekend for me. Might have to get on with AP. Yeah, I'm sure AP will be playing it. Any speculation on what card type the new Avenger is? AoE quick. That's what I'm gonna guess. But I will be probably even more excited if it's actually a single target. AoE Buster? Yeah, I mean I could see that. Has to be quick. It doesn't have to be. Hey, chat, just because a unit has like green motifs and stuff doesn't mean it's quick either, right? Might be in the minority, but I really liked Obi-Wan Kenobi. I actually thought Obi-Wan Kenobi was largely okay. There were some points where I felt like the CGI whiffed. There were certain story elements that I didn't think were good, but I largely felt like it was passable. Whereas, like, I watched it with Andre, and Andre hated it. So, just what it is. Single target Buster, maybe. Um, I would hope. I would hope at that point, if it's going to be another single target, that they hit arts, just so that we actually have a single target SSR arts. But that would make her very strong. They should have ended Mando after season 2. I think Mando season 3 is fine. Like, I think you can keep going with Mando because that recipe for success that was there in the first 2 seasons will continue to succeed. The issue is they changed the recipe. They and from everything I've ever heard, it was Kathleen Kennedy got involved with season 3, even though she was not supposed to have any involvement with it. She apparently manipulated the behind the scenes politics at the studios to allow for her to get involved with it. And basically, when she did, it went to shit. She got her hands on the Pander Stone again. Yeah. Yeah, I saw the South Park spoof where it was making fun of her, and basically like for everything she wanted there to be a woman in charge of it, and she wanted the woman to be a lesbian. And like basically it even got to the point where it was, Cartman as Kathleen Kennedy, and he's ordering a cup of coffee and he demands that the coffee have a woman in it and that she be lesbian. So it just made me laugh. They need to can her. She's done nothing but ruin my favorite franchise. Yeah, I agree with that. Like I completely agree with that. I am so like disappointed in where Star Wars is as a whole, but sadly, I don't think like I think I could still watch certain things from Star Wars and like it, but I don't think that I will ever agree with the sequel trilogy ever. And I was somebody that thought that the prequel trilogy, at least at first, was really good. Then I, watched some stuff online that changed my opinion of it somewhat, and I in that basically came downhill from there and thought like, the prequel trilogy does kind of suck in some ways. I love it still, But like what I realized is, ironically enough, given our prior conversation, the writing for the prequel trilogy was bad. Not the major plot points; those were fine. The actual like dialogue in the prequel trilogy is what's to be desired, right? Like again, when you have lines like "I like sand" and you stroke the girl's back, and that's supposed to be like your hitting move, like where you're hitting on her and trying to seduce her. I'm like, I don't know about that, right? So I think they could have written it a little bit better, but I still largely like the prequel trilogy. Versus the sequel trilogy, I think the first movie in the sequel trilogy was okay, but it completely obviously like rehashes A New Hope. But I still was willing to accept it for what it was. But that first movie is the only one I'm okay with. Everything after that first movie is terrible, and I never want to see it ever again. Like, as far as I'm concerned, they would do better to just pick that up, put it over here, and declare it Legends content and say it doesn't exist. But they won't do that. You've never met a girl from Naboo, though. That's true. Maybe they're easy, right? Yeah, Red Letter Media tears the prequel trilogy a new one. And I'm gonna say he's a little bit too harsh, but he does make a lot of very valid points about how like the issue with the prequel trilogy is that Lucas has good ideas, but nobody ever told Lucas no. And so everyone was just a yes man to Lucas because he was like idolized at that point. And that because of that, that's why the prequel trilogy isn't better. It's you didn't have anyone else there to actually tell George, "Hey, this is a bad idea." If he had had some contrarians in the house, it would have made for a better series, but he didn't. That being said, even with everybody like telling George Lucas yes, it is still a better series by far than the sequel. They should have rewritten the Thrawn trilogy. Yeah, it's what everyone's asking for, and that's apparently what Dave Filoni's been kind of doing. That being said, chat, I have watched the Ahsoka series, and it was okay. I hated the first like 2 or 3 episodes of it, but to me, it got better from there. But one of the big issues I have lingering from that is that Thrawn is now in the mix as of the Ahsoka series, and Thrawn has no motivation to being siding with the Empire at all. Because the Empire is highly xenophobic, and it's like widely accepted that Thrawn had to rise up through the ranks in the Empire due to his actual expertise. The only reason Thrawn would have done that is to help his own people, the Chiss Ascendancy. Which, again, this is getting into like expanded universe knowledge. And that's his entire motivation for doing it. Yet in the new expanded like universe that Disney's putting out, there is no mention of the Chiss Ascendancy. There is no mention of the threat that caused Thrawn to actually work with the Empire. So as a result, Thrawn has actually no motivation for doing anything that he's doing. And it just doesn't really work, right? Filoni is a hack. I hate him. No, I think Filoni's actually pretty good. I think Filoni at least cares a hell of a lot more than most of the rest of the people involved. Thrawn doesn't make sense without the Yizeng Vong. Yeah. But to be fair, you didn't know about them back then anyway. So they can change. If they don't want to do Yizeng Vong, they can change who they are, right? And I think that's fine. Like, they can change what the threat is, but there needs to be some motivation for Thrawn doing what he's doing. I hated The Last Jedi, but left The Rise of Skywalker totally apathetic. Okay, so Rise of Skywalker, you get Clone of Palpatine coming back. And it is the stupidest thing that I've ever seen because, well, and you might be thinking like, oh yeah, dude, it's totally stupid that Palpatine came back with a clone. No, that's actually not what I mean. Because Palpatine comes back with a clone in the expanded universe that got decanonized by Disney. The difference there is in the expanded universe, Palpatine was way smarter about it and said, you know what? If I'm going to come back, I'm going to come back as like me with all of my knowledge and brain power and force power in a young body where I'm in like my peak form, where I'm just like badass as all shit. Instead of like the version that we get in the movie where it's like, yo, bro, I'm going to come back as a cripple. It's like, what? Like, you had a choice and you chose the clearly worse option. Like, he basically just comes back in a form that is going to end up dying in a couple years anyways. Well, he hasn't written anything good since Clone Wars. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say this. From everything I've heard about Rebels, I don't think Rebels is that good, right? But I'm also going to say at that point, like, as of Rebels, you already had Disney's interference. And I think that's kind of the issue. I think Filoni knows what people wants, but he keeps getting fought on things. Like, chat, so that you're aware of this, okay? So that you understand. Do you guys remember in Mandalorian when Luke Skywalker shows up? And I don't want to like spoil anyone, but he does show up at a point. Everyone loved that. And so immediately after that, going into like the next season of The Mandalorian, they apparently sat down and had a meeting. And everyone was like, yo, can we use Luke Skywalker? Is he back on the table? And Kathleen Kennedy told people, no. Under no circumstances can you ever use Luke Skywalker again. He is a shelved character. You are not allowed to use him. This is how you know it's not Filoni's fault. This is how you know you have that woman interfering with the way that things should be working. And apparently, from everything we've heard behind the scenes, this is one of the big reasons that she's actually in hot water, is not the performance necessarily of the shows. It's apparently that the entire merch line for the sequel trilogy is just dead on arrival. Like, people are basically saying that they can't move the merch. And because they can't move the merch, which I don't know if you guys actually know this or not, but the majority of income for Star Wars is from merch. It's not from the movies. It's not from the shows. So it's like all the toys and stuff that they sold, like all the Lego sets, the action figures, the video games, you name it. Well, we already know how they're doing in video games right now because they ain't produced very much. But like, the whole point is, that's apparently what's got her in hot water, is everybody is like going back at them and being like, you need to fix Star Wars. Because Star Wars used to be apparently like the major thing that moved the most merch out of like all of that crap. So it's kind of hilarious to see that, like, yeah, they're basically saying like, if you don't fix it, we're not buying more merch from you. Like you're not getting the shelf space from us. So I find that really funny. There's a reason why Pokemon is the highest grossing franchise of all time, and it's not because of Pokemon Red. Yeah, exactly. It's the cards, it's the merch, it's everything is just like going crazy with it. Didn't people hate season 2? Season 2 was not as good as season 1, but I think season 2 is still fine. But yeah, it's like I still just find that hilarious that it's like that's the thing that's getting her in trouble. Okay, chat, let's do the voting. Let's vote. I think we need a more grounded space opera style Star Wars, more political than Jedi Sith focus. I mean, that's apparently what a lot of people liked about like Rogue One, and a lot of people liked about Andor, is like they didn't have the Jedi Sith stuff. And I think I'm gonna say this: I think people actually still really love like Jedi and Sith in Star Wars. I think what people are beginning to be like groaning about is like you have like the shonen power inflation thing going on, where it's like everybody has to have some new crazy bullshit power. Everybody has to have like some new take on a lightsaber that's never been seen before. It's like you can't just have a well-written character anymore. It's tokenism. It's this character is that unique aspect, right? So it's like I think that's what ultimately has people, pissed off. But anyways, yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start doing the voting here. So for those of you guys that hadn't seen at this point in time, JP has announced that they are going to leave it up to the community to vote for the next rerun. They're giving us two options. We can vote for two of them, and as a result, we get to pick, basically. So it's, I assumedly, it's going to be a popularity contest based off that. Now, again, we'll see maybe behind the scenes, because they'll probably never show us the results. Or maybe they will at like anniversary or something this year. But like, basically, we'll get to vote, and then the devs are going to choose which one they want to do from the voting. So, assumedly, it will matter. But again, you can see voting is only possible once per account. Personal information is provided when voting. And again, so you're going to have to type in your user ID and such. And it's basically just saying, touch the friends and follow from the menu below, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we're pretty good. So this is just Google translated. I have not, actually managed to do anything else like crazy here. Gonna go ahead and put my thing in without any of the commas, because that's usually what it requires. And we're gonna talk to you guys about the overall events here and try to help you guys think about how to approach this, because I do think this vote matters, okay? We've talked about this for a while now, how, I know a lot of people didn't much care for reruns, but I think reruns at least helped fill in the time, fill in the gap between, new events and stuff like that. And so the game felt less dead when they were doing them. I think the devs have, at least, even if there's no official way to contact them, kind of heard that through the grapevine from social media and stuff, that people are not liking the fact that there are no more reruns. And I told you guys this years ago, to which people told me I was wrong and that blah, 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 blah. Anyways, the whole point was, years ago, the devs basically said that they were kind of going to scale back on how many reruns they were doing. That they didn't think that the reruns were very worth it, because for veteran players, they don't care to keep redoing the events. I think reading between the lines, it had nothing to actually do with that, and it was more of a developer issue for, just struggling to have the manpower and resources to devote to bringing old events back. I've talked about this before, that a lot of people assume that a rerun is much easier to do than an actual event. And the reality is probably that it is harder than people realize, but yes, it is probably still somewhat easier than doing a whole new event. I think part of the issue here at play is like where their bottleneck probably is probably on the coding side of things, and they gotta dust off the code for all this stuff. They basically have to go through it again, make sure it works, and test it out on new patch cycles where things have changed. So I think a lot of people don't really understand that it is probably more difficult than they're giving it credit for. But I am going to say that the devs saying that it's as hard to do a rerun as it is to do a new event is also not true. That's dev speak. Don't listen to their lies. And the reason I'm going to tell you that they are lying to you right there is because it just simply doesn't pass the logic test of, you already have all of the assets and all of the IP created for that event. You don't have to sit down and write it all over again, come up with new art assets, yada, yada, yada. But that's why, again, I think for them, it's functionally the same thing, because their bottleneck isn't on the writers or the artists anymore. I suspect their bottleneck lies again on the animation and, kind of coding departments where they just don't have the bodies to actually work in the Unity engine. Maybe just due to the fact that they're in Japan, maybe due to the fact that Unity is a different specialization. Who knows? Regardless, it seems to be the case that that's what's going on. And I think that's how we can easily put this together and sort of sift through the dev statements that what they're saying kind of at face value is somewhat of a lie, but also not from their perspective. They're telling us what appears to be the truth to them. So again, based off of that, though, we have 2 votes in this. So you need to make your 2 votes count, because this is an easy way for you guys to get back story that you haven't experienced, event rewards that you may have missed, and potentially even banners to come back for units that you desire. So there is a lot to think about here. And based off of that, I think we can kind of go through this list with you guys here real quick and come up with some ones that, I'll ultimately end up deciding for myself, but at least to help guide you as to how I'm thinking about it, and maybe that will help you guys. So to start off with, we have 2020. The very first one here is going to be save Amazonas.com. This is the Amazonas Tower event. There was no welfare for this event. It basically is just a fun tower event. But the rewards are okay. There's nothing really too much to that. And actually, the banners are probably going to end up being one of the worst banners out of this list, because it's almost all exclusively permanent units for this. So to me, this one is an absolute no. I do not wish to experience this again. I will say, as far as tower events go, I liked that tower event more than the shoe tower event that just recently came out on JP. But that has less to do with anything about the actual event and more just the overall design of the 2 events. The new JP tower event had an issue where every single floor after the 50th floor, so for the last 150 floors, were all servants for every single enemy. And every single time you encounter a servant in a node for the first time, the game slows down and zooms in on them. And it had to do that basically 450 times. It was not a fun experience, to say the least. So, like I said, to me, they could have handled that a little bit better. But regardless, next up here is the Valentine event. This is the Murasaki Shikibu event. Again, Valentines don't really have welfares from them. It'd be interesting to see if you voted for a Valentine's event, would you get the entire onslaught of Valentine's banners? I'm going to bet no. You probably only get the banner for the actual unit. And so as a result, I don't think voting for Valentine's is that worth, unless you just specifically want that unit or that story. I thought it was a decent event, but yeah, I'm going to say no on that one as well. Next one is the Aeon Spring Breeze event. This one was your Chaldea Boys event for that one. There was also no welfare here. This was the Odysseus event. It also starred Circe. I thought it was a really fun story, but at the end of the day, really nothing more here to look at. Nothing more to really consider. Next up is Fate Requiem, the board game apocalypse. I have a personal grudge against this, and I'm going to say this to people. So, definitely already some speculation from chat earlier on this, but I did see some people saying, well, Cad, what if we voted for Fate Requiem? Would that give us a chance at getting Marie Alter? And the answer is probably not. I don't think with a rerun like this, kind of like you guys are going through the Case Files collab right now, you got new story and a new unit. I don't think they're going to do that anymore. If the whole reason they're not running reruns as much is because they're strapped for resources, like manpower-wise, I don't think you're going to see extra story and a whole new unit getting animated and stuff like that for this. So, obviously, I too hope for Marie Alter at some point. I think she's a really, interesting design from a plot perspective. But other than that, I absolutely did not care for this event in the slightest. I thought that the board game was one of the worst implemented collabs just because of the overall design of the board itself. there was basically a stretch where you would always hit everything over and over and over again. Or sorry, you would skip everything on the second quadrant of the board because you would potentially hit the corner and that would jump you to jail, basically. And then on the third quadrant of the board, as you're coming back down the diagonal, it basically would sometimes kick you back. So you would experience the third quadrant way too many times, and you experience the second quadrant not nearly enough times. So I felt like that was half their issue, is because they had those spaces that forced you forward and back, that it kind of caused some lack of balance in the board design. I think there would have been numerous ways that they could have handled it on a rerun, but we haven't gotten the rerun, nor do I want to see if they actually have the time to devote to fixing that. So I'm going to say, for me personally, I absolutely don't want to do this, and please do me a favor and don't vote for it. But if you want to, go for it, I guess. Next one is Dance Party in the Land of Shadows. So this is interesting. Would voting for the rerun of a lotto get you an uncapped lotto? And then similarly, would that uncapped lotto be in addition to any other lottos that would occur throughout the year? I don't know. And I think that's something to consider. It is theoretically possible, because if you remember, we had the Gilfest event, we had Nero Fest. Every single one of those fest events basically had a rerun until we got to Shisho Fest. And then Shisho Fest, I thought, was really good. It didn't include the entire onslaught of challenge quests in it, and instead you ended up getting Grail Fronts, which I thought was a really interesting take on it for once. I didn't like the CE in that event for the Lotto CE, because it was one of the worst ones we've ever had. It was mixed stats. It had a small bit of Buster Up and then Guts on it, and the Guts actually made it more difficult for people to be able to Chin Gong or Arash or something like that, where they were going to cycle the party. So I thought the CE for that event was actually pretty garbage. But regardless, I am going to say I think it's interesting from a standpoint of, yes, I would like to see a rerun to the Shisho Fest Lotto, and I would love to see that format come back. So I think, in a weird way, if they wanted to bring back Grailfront plus Lotto, I would love that, and I would like to see that. So that may be a consideration for me. Out of all the 2020 events, I think only Dance Party in the Land of Shadows is worth considering for me. Next up, we have 2021. This is Little Big Tengu. I really like Little Big Tengu, and you do have the Welfare Kichi Hogan here. You do have the CE for Mama Raiko that gives basically crit damage and Buster Up. I think 50% charge as well, and it's all attack scaling. So it's a very, very nice CE. Definitely one that people would like to have. They maybe had missed out on it. I think this would be a decent option for one. As far as the sort of, hey, don't do any of these that I did for 2020, I think already right here off the bat in 2021, this is a decent one, depending on what you need and what you want. Next up, you've got the Holy Grail Front, Itu Brute. So this is the Roman Grail Front. I'm going to say, obviously for Dance Party in the Land of Shadows, there were Grail Fronts in that, and that's fine, but you're really getting more bang for your buck with something like that due to the fact that it is a lotto. For the Holy Grail Fronts, where it's just a Grail Front, don't vote for them. There is no point. I love Grail Fronts as much as the next guy, but there is no point. You get nothing out of this. Okay, so to me, this is basically just not worth. There's really not even story in the early Grail Fronts either, so I don't think it's actually worth. Okay, this is San Valentino. This is basically your Karen Valentine's Day. So same sort of logic as before. I don't really think the Valentine's Day ones are actually worth voting for. It's an interesting one, nonetheless. If you really like Karen, you can absolutely go for it. But to me, this is another no. Holy Grail Phantom Thief Shiro Amakusa Slapstick Museum. I don't think this one really provides anything either. This is another Chaldea Boys. Probably the same logic applies. And as far as the Chaldea Boys go, I actually think the AE and Spring Breeze one was better than this one. So at the end of the day, I kind of am going to vote no on this one as well. Okay, then we have another tower event. This is the Akihabara Explosion one. This one was pretty interesting. It does have a banner for Nero Bride in it. And if you're someone that's trying to maybe acquire Nero Bride because she's a decent support option, that would bear worth considering. That being said, outside of that, I really got to give this one a no as well. I did like the story for it, but ultimately, at the end of the day, these tower events to me are not worth your vote. Grail Live. Y'all do me a solid and vote Grail Live. This event got such a bad rap from the English-speaking player base on JP when it first came out. The reason for this is because a lot of stalling and delaying leading up to the Grail Live event. The reality was the event was actually awesome in and of itself. And so, unfortunately, that negative atmosphere from JP trickled over to NA. Thankfully, NA seemed to see the light once we actually got our hands on the event, and the negative atmosphere surrounding this event was finally, like, kind of vanished. It basically got, like, shown to be wrong. You get a welfare in this with Mixa. You get costumes. You get music. I thought it was one of the most fun events I have done in that regard. It had unique mechanics, unique music, and costumes. And so I thought it was great. I would love to see if they are going to do more with a rerun. And that's a big if. But I would love to see more costumes. Heck, this might even be how the people that were angry that Ishtar didn't get a costume, maybe she gets a costume on the rerun. Maybe the units that didn't get the vote one end up getting it this time. So I think there is a lot of potential here. And I'm going to say this is absolutely one of the big ones that you guys should consider like voting for. But it just depends on your stance. Maybe you don't like Grailfront as much as I did. But I thought it was still, to this day, one of the most inventive and awesome events that they have ever done. Okay, Holy Grailfront, my Super Camelot. I'm biased towards Camelot, and I'm still not going to tell you to vote for this one, okay? And the reason I'm not going to tell you to vote for this one is because, again, it's just a Grailfront. There's nothing else here. You do get some nice banners for the Knights of the Round in this, but at the end of the day, there was not a Merlin banner for it, even though Merlin was depicted on it. And so I think there was that kind of issue with people on JP. So I don't think my Super Camelot is really worth. Okay, so Chaldea Summer Adventure, a dream-chasing boy and a dreaming girl. So that's actually an interesting one. Let's see. This would be, oh wow, this is Summer 5, isn't it, chat? Or is this 6? Yeah, this is the dinosaur one that we had just last year on NA, but I'm trying to remember if this was 5 or 6. This is 6? Okay. So this is another big one. Now, hear me out on this. They never reran this event because they were scared. This is the first summer event that didn't get a rerun. Summer 6 is the one that has the treasure boxes that you were able to farm for crazy resources. Summer 6 also has Ocean Flyer in it. And Da Vinci Ruler as a welfare. So already right here, and I can point to this and say that this is where we're at already in this current year as far as like viable candidates go. So you now have 3 in 2021. But to me right now, it's between these two right here. Because I got to admit, having the possibility to not only get all those lucrative CEs and welfares back, but also the potential to be able to farm that node again, that dropped the arrowheads, that gave again in the treasure boxes, ended up giving things like shells and meteor shards. Hell yes, that sounds amazing. I am pretty good on that already on my NA account, but I know there are a ton of people out there that would like to have another shot at that, even if just for a second MLB copy of Ocean Flyer. So I'm not gonna lie, right now, to me, it is basically between Grand Live and these two, and we'll keep going down the list. Okay, so then we have Halloween Rising, the Queen of Dust, and the Apostle of Darkness. This is the Zenobia one that we just got done with. Again, I thought this one was pretty nice. I actually really like this as far as a Halloween event goes. It's probably one of my favorite ones at this point. Just due to the overall nature of that Halloween event and the relative strength of Cinderella, as I'll like to call it. I like Zenobia's involvement. I like Cinderella there. So getting a nice welfare out of this event, I think, is pretty interesting. And if you guys will remember, this is also the 3-in-1 event. So there is a lot of consideration there for, hey, if you vote for this, it's almost like telling the devs that you really liked the way that they handled that and that you want to see more of this. You're potentially sending a message that, look, it was really cool that you recapped the old Halloween events, brought back all the old welfares, and brought back all the old CEs from this. And I can't argue with that logic. So if you want to vote for Halloween Rising, I think that is another option. So that's 4 options already in 2021 to the 1 basically up here. This is Guru Guru Ryoma Close Call, the mystery of the missing knobhead. I'm going to be frank with you and say that pretty much, other than Guru Guru's story here, the real thing that you are gaining is another shot at, AoE Avenger chat. What's her name? Ranmaru. Mysterious Ranmaru X. So basically, she's going to be the real focus of this. If you want her, go with that. Again, you'd get potentially certain banners with this one as well, but don't do it for the detective missions. They really were not that worth it, I think, as you guys saw in the end. There was no real way to efficiently farm them or anything like that, so you're not really getting a lot of bang for your buck in that one compared to something like Summer 6 would be. And then from here, we have the Making Christmas Party. Again, this was, to me, probably one of the worst Christmas events ever. It's not that the story of the event wasn't good. I actually was okay with it. It's just the fact that there is no new unit offered. You do get a Scotty banner from this, if that's what you're after, or again, the welfare of Martha Castor. But at the end of the day, I don't really think this has that much value here. Yes, it is a lotto. Maybe it would be uncapped for you. So maybe if you want to look at the resources there and what it had to offer, that might be a thing. But again, there's no guarantee that you will get an uncapped version on the rerun. They may just put it at like 10 or 20 boxes and say, have at it. So I'm not really too keen on this. This was also only a 9-day event. If you guys remember, you didn't have a long time to actually do it. Who knows, though, maybe in the grand scheme of JP, they give you like 3 weeks to actually do it. But at that point, I think they would cap it. So I'm just going to say at the end of the day, I don't think this is a good one. And I'd actually, at that point, if you're going to vote for a lotto, I'd rather see at this point that you voted for, Dance Party in the Land of Shadows. So then we end up making it to 2022. And you guys can see this is a reprint of the Case Files event. Y'all want to see that? So Case Files event at least has the really nice return of Gray there with her upgrade. You do get the Hephaestion banner with Reigns. I'm going to say at the end of the day, the banners for this are what's really going to kill this one more than anything. Because they were not really good pairings in the sense that you had Waver with Estrella and you had Reigns with Hephaestion. The CE, the welfare CE from this event is actually not that bad if you guys take a look at it, but at the end of the day, I'm just going to say that most people probably won't vote for this, but in a sneaky way, I could see a lot of the Japanese people voting for it because it just came out on an A, and they do at least have some sort of cognizance as to what's going on in an A. So there may be a nostalgia factor that kind of gets this one, in terms of like recency bias, voted for more than it otherwise would be. Next up is Mananan Souvenir Valentine. This is basically Bazette rerun. I love Bazette. Voting for this would be getting a rerun Bazette banner. But at the end of the day, again, I think this still kind of falls under the Valentine's rules, where I don't really think it's actually worth your vote. Then we have the 15 intelligent glasses. This is going to be coming up. This is the Chaldea Boys event on NA. It is the return of an Arjuna altar banner, but otherwise I wouldn't expect anything else from it. You would potentially get the glasses costumes to come back with this. Depending on how you feel about those, you may like that, but to me, not that big of a deal. There's only like one or two of them that I even really cared for. So at the end of the day, I'd say it's probably not really worth it, especially because eventually those will probably come back into the actual Miss Crane shop. And so at the end of the day, I don't think it's worth your vote. Battle in New York, 2022, A Space Odyssey. So we're not voting for this one, okay? I forbid you to vote for this. Look, here's my reason why not, okay? In all seriousness. Tesla Fest was one of the worst events in the entirety of FGO that I have ever done. I am going to have to rerun it on NA. I never want to see it or talk about it again after that point. The reason why it is reviled by me, at least, and I know for a fact I'm not the only one, there's plenty of other people out there, including on the JP server side of things, is because of a couple factors. The first factor is the fact that there are 31 different challenge quests in a lotto. In those 31 different challenge quests, there are 2 sets of 7 challenge quests each that must be completed without basically revives, without a support unit, and any unit that you use in any one of the 7 fights cannot be used in any of the other 7 fights. So it is excruciatingly difficult for free-to-play and cheap-to-play players to make it through because they just simply don't have the sustain to actually put into all of the battles. It results in them having to do long-winded solo kills of a lot of it, and it's not a good structure for challenge content going forward. We actually did see them do this with the Olga battle, basically on JP, where she showed up at one point. But I'm going to say that this is really just not actually worth. I think that battle that we just talked about was a better implemented version, and it still had some issues that people on JP complained about it. So, again, that alone is the first reason why I'm not going to vote for it. The second reason is because basically the devs lied to us. Mr. 2, going all the way back, actually, ironically enough, when he was talking about the Land of Shadows lotto, ended up mentioning the fact that he had realized back then that people did not like challenge quests paired with lottos. And the reason was because it apparently, the feedback that he had heard was that it put undue stress on people to feel like they had to devote time to both. And that it made it so that they couldn't just sit there and farm, and so they didn't like that. And that's why he said they didn't put challenge quests in the Shisho Fest lotto. They basically did Grail fronts instead, which was the origin of that idea, and I, for one, like that a lot better. Don't get me wrong, I like challenge content, but I prefer my challenge content and my farming opportunities to usually be separated. That is to say, I don't really want to have to sit there and spend hours upon hours upon hours doing challenge quests when I could instead be farming, because I'm already spending enough time playing the game already. The reality is, if their goal is to try and give people that like challenge quests and don't like farming something to do, then they still weren't going to farm the lotto even if you put the challenge quests there. So you could have put the challenge quests at any point and it would have appeased them, including the week before or the week after. So putting them during the lotto only serves one purpose, and that is basically to create this anxiety, this pressure to do both. And I don't think that's a good recipe for them. So anyways, like I said, Mr. 2 said back then that's why they weren't doing it and that they weren't going to put challenge quests in a lotto going forward. And then basically 2 lottos later, Mr. 2 spat out the worst conglomeration of challenge quests the game has ever seen in what event? A lotto, nonetheless. So I have to give Mr. Two crap for that. I love the guy, but like, I'm sorry, he ate his words right there. Because at the end of the day, that was a complete betrayal of what he had told us. And I don't think it's necessarily entirely his fault. I think there's definitely something to be desired there as to why that design of that event was the way it was. I think they were on a challenge kick, kind of coming off the back of all the raids and all the farming that we had done in this year. Because again, when we get to this Tesla Fest event here on NA, that is sort of the cutoff where finally the farming is over for a good like 7 to 8 months at that point. But until that, we basically are still going through this gauntlet of a ton of challenge and farm quests, including the Barbatos raid coming up right now. So again, to me, I'm not voting for this, both because I hated this event, and secondly, because I don't ever want to justify the devs lying to us. I did not like the way that was handled. Clearly, the devs heard that, because with the next lotto after Tesla Fest, they turned it way down. And with the next Fest event, even further beyond with Ilya Fest, they ended up actually making a bunch of sort of canned challenges that had you take 5 pre-planned units and you could only take your 6th unit that you filled in. So they realized that people responded really negatively to that event and that they didn't like it. And they dialed it way back after that point. And again, that's exactly why I will not vote for this. Out of all the lottos, I think this one to me is the worst one you could vote for. Okay, so that was a lot about that. But the next one up here is the Sea Monster Crisis event. This is where we get Tai Sui. He is an AoE arts alter ego. He is really good in actuality. I think a lot of people sleep on him, but he is a very, very quality AoE loopable alter ego. Much in the same way as we'll talk about with EO later. He is very solid at certain points in the game. So if you want to vote for this one, I don't blame you. The story I've also been told is very interesting for this one. You do get some interesting banners, including the return of Morgan Le Fay, the return of Melt Lancer. So there's definitely some interesting stuff coming along with Water Monster Crisis, including the Trung sisters on their banner. So it's up to you if you want to vote for this. I do think this one would be a decent one, but I'm probably not going to vote for it myself. The serial drama Myth Mississippi Massizers. This is your collab event. This is the Bunyan collab event. This is aka Learning with Manga collab event. This is where you get the Welfare CE cranking. You've probably heard me talk about it in a ton of the servant analysis videos. It is the premier 50% starting charge buster CE at this point on JP. It is really, really good. This event has never had a rerun, so nobody has ever gotten a second crack at it. Obviously, if you missed it, you would definitely want it for cranking, but even if you've already done it, getting a second cranking wouldn't be that bad. It would actually be pretty good in a lot of ways. So it's up to you to determine if you want to go after this one. This would be the Super Bunyan banner. It's actually really solid in that regard. Unfortunately, I don't believe this one. Oh no, it did have a welfare. It was Mary Anning, but she just had a banner on JP. She is an FP unit, so I'm gonna say that one's not got a very high margin of hey, I gotta have it right now, because it's pretty clear that they'll keep bringing her back when they have the opportunity to. So to me, I don't think this one's that big of a deal, other than for cranking or the banner. Though that being said, this is one of those events that had somewhat infinite scalability, in that you could keep farming the event because it has a sort of tunnel digging mechanism. It's very similar to the Diamond and Pearl tunneling in Pokemon, where you dig underground and you get gems and fossils and stuff, and based off of that, you get different resources. So it was actually kind of nice. For that, it did have some repeatable farmability, much to the same degree that the Gouda Gouda event later this year will. But again, it's up to you to determine if you want a rerun of that. I think, especially if you play NA, voting for anything in 2022 is probably going to leave a sour taste in your mouth, just from the mindset of you will have to do this twice this year if you play both servers. But again, it's up to you. Next up is the Holy Grail Front Moonsault Operation. Out of all the Grail Fronts, this one kind of has a story to it. Not really. The reality is, I actually really like these Grail Fronts. I thought this was really awesome, but at the end of the day, it's just a Janako banner, and some of the Grail Fronts here take like upwards of 45 minutes to complete. They were not that, like in terms of a challenge standpoint, they were somewhat challenging, but also in the annoyance sense, because there are quite a few points during the Moonsault operation where you have to like kite stuff around in order to be able to actually get the treasure chest before the enemies unalive themselves on you. So at that point, I didn't really like that. I managed to pull it off for all of them, but I'm sure a lot of people had trouble with it. I don't really think it's worth it just because, again, it is a Holy Grail front. Next up is the Hakenden event. The Hakenden event does have a little bit of infinite scalability because you can dispatch dogs to constantly go get resources for you. You do get a little bit of choice in that, but not like you don't get to choose from all materials. You just get to choose from like one or two materials as to which one you need more. I did really like the Hakenden event. It is the Bakin banner, but there is no welfare from it. So at the end of the day, I thought it was a decent one, but it's not the like, oh my god, gotta have type of event. You can vote for it if you want, but to me, probably not that big of a deal. Then we get Arctic Summer World, Chaldea Midsummer Magic Garden Sightseeing. This is Summer 7. This is a very good one to vote for. Let me explain why. The welfare in this event happens to have 6 different variations. The reality is it's only 3 different variations with a costume for each that is an additional form. But until this comes into the Evocation Festival, it's going to require you to actually have, again, your initial copy and then potentially vote for this for a rerun if you want to get a second copy. Otherwise, you're going to be waiting and you're going to have to buy 2 copies out of the Evocation Festival once they finally do show up. So I do think there's some kind of smart logic here of voting for Summer 7, get you another Valkyrie version for free. And they are a wholly distinct unit, so that would be at least somewhat interesting, as you would potentially be able to take an entire party worth of Valkyries at some point. But I'm going to say at the end of the day, this one's probably for most people going to come down more than anything to the banners. Summer 7 ended up having some of the most prolific banners we've seen in a long time. It's the big banners a lot of people are telling you to roll for this year. So I think having the return of Proto Merlin, the return of Summer Scotty, and the return of Ibuki, I think is going to cause a lot of people to vote for this one. And I can't get angry at you if you do. I think there is a lot of logic to voting for this one. So it just kind of remains to be seen. And for me, I am going to actually now at this point go ahead and unclick that one right there for Chaldea Summer Adventure, because I personally don't need anything from it at this point. And I am going to come down here and put it on Arctic Summer World for my other one. So right now my current votes are for Grail Live and for Arctic Summer World. All right, this is Gouda 7, and Gouda 7 is a tea ceremony where you get to farm tea leaves. The tea leaves can be exchanged for one of several options for basically like different essential materials. So this was a decent farming opportunity for quite a bit of people. This is the Senno Rikyu banner. This is going to end up being a decent opportunity for people. This will be where you get EO. So there's a lot to look forward in voting for Gouda 7. I think there's definitely some people that will vote for this, especially if they missed EO, because of how useful EO has proven to be in a lot of the 90++ nodes that have come out after her. Again, there's no telling. The 90++ nodes in the future may be completely worthless to bring EO if they never put like moon cancers and stuff in them. But EO certainly has proven useful up until this point on JP, so it just remains to be seen as to whether or not people will want to vote for that. Then we end up with the 108 People's Halloween Rebellion. This is Huyan Zhou, the AoE quick assassin, and Huang Fei Hu, the single target Buster Rider. Honestly, don't vote for this one because all you're really getting out of this one is a banner. I really don't think there's too much to this one. You can vote for it if you want, but I don't think this one has nearly the punching power of any of the other ones. Chaldea Fairy Night Cup. This is your other lotto for the year. This is the one that's going to happen basically in November. Definitely a return to form after the Tesla Fest event for them. But this was nice because instead of getting a Christmas style lotto where you got the nodes releasing over time, you got a fest event, so you had good nodes available right away, and that really worked out for a lot of people. Again, if you think that the devs will give you an uncapped lotto, this is definitely a decent opportunity for people to go for. This was also the Burrito Mart banner, and potentially even the whatchamacallit. The return of Morgan Le Fay. Sorry, I had to think about that. Oh yeah, hold on. So chat's saying that I unclicked Arctic Summer World because chat won't let me unclick that one. I'm being held at gunpoint. Chat, help. So anyways, that's all of 2022. And then we have the 2023 one. The first one here is the Popes Johanna. This is your Valentine's event for this year. Really nothing to this. It's a Pope Joan banner. That's basically it. Like, so to me, I'm not really going to vote for this one. I don't think it's that worth. Then we have Chaldea Heavy Industry Story. This is your, God, what's his name? Takasugi event. And he is an AoE archer, basically. I don't really, again, kind of under the same logic, don't really see the point to this one. If you really want another return of him, go for it. But I can definitely see a ton of people voting for this next one. This next one here is Spiral Proof World Lilim Harlot, Rose Without Applause. This is the Draco event and assumedly a Draco banner. Voting for this is daring the devs not to give Draco a banner. If you vote for this, you say, I see you devs. I know what you've done. Give me my Draco banner now. 100%. That is what you're doing with this. And I can't blame you at this point. I think the devs have purposely tried to make Draco rare and limited so that she's highly in demand for when she gets a return banner. Who knows? You might even see the pre-release Tiamat banner as well. So it is definitely possible. But I'm going to say at the end of the day, that's basically a sticking it to the devs vote. You can do it if you want. I'm not going to encourage or discourage it. I think it just falls on you to determine. I will say this, though. For those of you guys that really want to stick it to the devs, just please consider this. If you don't vote for this, if this doesn't get a rerun, Tiamat and Draco will get another banner this year, regardless. They were already going to get one. The devs work like that. They're not going to let the unit go more than 2 years at this point before cashing in on it. So I think it's reasonable to assume they're coming back and it's only a matter of time. So you probably don't need to vote for this other than that. So it's just kind of, oh yeah, it's true. Tiamat was at New Year's. So again, you're just basically at this point looking for Draco. But again, I'm going to say at the end of the day, you probably don't need to vote for this for, just Draco at that point. She will get a banner this year. I promise you. And you can come back and tell me I was wrong if that doesn't happen. But again, I don't see the devs holding off on a unit that will make them a ton of money when a lot of their design choices nowadays happen to be very money oriented. So I do believe you will get another Draco banner this year whenever it happens. But again, if you want to vote for it to ensure it, to make it come faster, who knows? And that being said, I say faster. You don't know when this rerun will be. When we vote on it, they're going to tabulate all the votes, and then they may take forever to actually get the rerun out. So it really just depends. But I am going to say that it's going to happen at some point. She will get that banner. So just keep that in mind. I think you don't have to vote for this based off that, unless you just really like the story here. But again, it's up to you. So this is actually the Ilya Lotto right here, Ilya Fest, if you will. And like I said, this one had, it was infinitely scalable as far as lottos go, and the challenge quests were a lot faster to complete. There were not nearly as many of them. There were, I think, like 6 to 7 challenge quests, which is pretty normal for a lotto. So I thought this one was pretty tame, very easy to farm. I didn't really see any issues with it. If you guys want to vote for this one to come back, be my guest, but it's completely up to you. Mystic Eyes Symphony, The Enchanted Forest and Beautiful Footprints. Don't vote for this, please. I don't want to have to do this tower event again. Out of all the tower events, I would rather do any other tower event than do this one again. It is the Foot Fetish tower event. It does have the Medusa one in this, so if you really want to see another Medusa Saber banner, you can vote for it. But again, I think the same sort of logic applies as with Draco. You will probably see another banner for Medusa Saber coming up this year. So I don't think you have to worry too much about that. And like I said, the actual event to me was very much a slog. I had the least fun with this event out of all the other tower events I've done, and I normally really love tower events. But this one just really dragged on for me. Then we have Servant Summerfest 2023. This is going to be the return of obviously Arturia Berserker, the return of potentially Morgan Le Fay summer form, aka Ace / Tonalico. And as well, chat, who's the other SSR that I'm suddenly forgetting? Melisson Ruler. So definitely some good stuff here. Also Nocnaria as your welfare. So again, decent reasons to vote for this one. But I think you can probably assume that going forward, they will continue to give these units banners. Yes, you might have to wait some time, but patience may pay off for you. Again, I am going to say this too. Keep in mind that the stories do matter here. So if you really want to see a story come back because you missed it or you really liked it, that probably should influence your perception on this. Because again, I think the messaging here is that you are not getting all of these as reruns. The devs are never going to go back to that, where everything kind of gets a rerun. I expect at this point that this is very much a pick kind of the things you want to save, basically, going forward. Then we have Wangina World Tour, Around the World with a Great Spirit. This is literally the Wangina banner. I didn't think that this really had that much to do. This was a pretty boring event as far as I'm concerned. It was just 40 AP in a dream. And so it's like, again, if you really like the story and you missed it, or you just really want Wangina, go for it. But I don't really see too big of a reason to go for this one either. As far as the Holy Grail front events go, this one's actually an actual event, so there would be a reason to potentially vote for this. This is the Ptolemy banner, so certainly if you're after him, this would be a potentially good one to go for, but other than that, there really is not too much on this one either. We have Guda Super Goryaku Killing Sign is M51. This was the recent one with Takeda Shingen and Weisuke Kenshin, aka Nagao Kagatora's adult form. But again, not too much going on here with this one either. I thought it was pretty okay, but I don't know. And then your last one here is Merry Christmas in the Snowfield 2023. 7 days, 8 years, Snow Carol. This, as far as lotto events go, I did like the fact that they changed the Christmas formula. That was good. But mark my words, if you vote for this right here, you will not get the rerun of this for a long time. So it is what it is. I would expect that it would only rerun like at the end of the year. Would it be an uncapped lotto? Probably not because of that. So they'd probably go back to the old sort of way in which they handle those. But I did overall like the design here. And I just felt like Nemo is a really good welfare, but not that big of a deal. So I don't. I think given the recency of this, you're not going to really see anyone on the JP side of things vote for this one, just because everyone just experienced it. So it is what it is. But I think that's kind of your voting. So at the end of the day, to me, it comes down to potentially three, at least for me. It's going to be the Grail Live event, the Arctic Summer World event, and then, like I said, potentially voting for a Draco return. But I'm gonna have faith. I'm gonna actually trust that the devs. I'm gonna trust in the devs' greed and assume that they want to make money, and that's going to ultimately cause them to bring a Draco banner back. Usually, like I said, chat, patience pays off. So again, let me know what you guys are going to vote for. And again, I will see you guys for the next one. Good luck on the Barbatos raid. Okay. Yes, I was recording that, chat. So yeah, these are going to be my two. I'm going to vote for Grail Live, and I'm going to vote for Arctic Summer World. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Draco is coming back with the 2025 Battle Pass. Jesus, if we need a Battle Pass and FGO, this game is lost. No events from pre-2020? No, they said it's only 2020 to 2023. ETA for raid, about an hour and 45 minutes. Draco or Arc have a good chance of the 30 million download campaign. Yeah, I think they're purposefully holding units back for that. Like, again, mark my words, chat. You will see a Draco banner in the next 12 months on JP. I guarantee it. There is no way they're going to hold off cashing in on that much. Yeah, know where to find the link? Yeah. Yeah, sent it to me before. I got it right here. There you go. I'll also put it in YouTube chat for you guys so that you guys have it. 30 million download gives us a free limited 5-star. I won't be surprised to see 30 million be something crazy. I don't want to like overhype it, but I do think that you're gonna see some really like nice stuff for 30 million. They have gone on the record as saying they want 30 million to be bigger than 25, or sorry, than 20 million even. And 20 million was the SSR selector. So that's some bold words from them. I don't think they say that lightly, right? Okay, chat. Limited SSR selector copium, yeah. You will see the Vulcan Evo this year. Right, and I do think that's a consideration. So it's like that summer vote may be wasted. Like the thing to consider here, chat, is whatever gets selected for the rerun will not appear in evocation this year. Whatever is already in evocation probably won't win because the JP people won't vote for it. And so you're just going to kind of see the devs playing with things where they're just going to go like, oh, either the Summer Valkyries are in, and chat, hear me out on this. You want to hear an evil thing that the devs can do? You remember how there's 3 Summer Valkyries, right? In before, oh yeah, you get 1 Summer Valkyrie here. And then you get 1 Summer Valkyrie here. And then you get 1 Summer Valkyrie here. And they spread it out over 3 different campaigns so that the people that wanted like the 3rd one, whichever one it is, just ultimately end up molding because like they have to wait so long to actually get it. What are we even missing an evocation anymore? I don't know. Actually, I can ask Avalon to look into that because we definitely should. Mixes and evocation, so yeah, don't get me wrong. Like I feel y'all. I'm still gonna vote for Grail Life. I don't care. I really want them to do a Grail Life rerun. I really want it. Like I absolutely, out of all the events that they have ever done, that is the event that I was like, man, I wish that one got a rerun. Man. No, it doesn't have everyone. I don't think NA can vote. NA can vote if you have a JP account, right? Like if you've made an alt account because you just are lazy and don't play it that much, but you still had it to check out stuff, that is a thing. Happy Monday. Good morning, Faye. But yes, hello. It let me use my NAID. Jed, I think you just stole someone's ID. Like I legitimately think that like somebody had the same ID as you on Japan and you just used it. Big oof indeed. You can insert any 9-digit number and it shows you that it accepts it. That's wild. Going to jail? Yeah. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, even if you use someone else's, like, I assume they get credit for it, so who cares? It just means that if they tried to vote, then I guess they wouldn't potentially get it. Assuming, yeah, I mean, again, like, it assumes that they even actually keep track of, like, how many times something voted. I assume they do, but it'd be what it be. Waxing Moon Sword Gale Chronicles chat. That will be starting Wednesday for us, by the way. So, like, and not like Wednesday going into Thursday, but like actually Wednesday. All right, chat, where did we. Oh, God. Chat, correct me if I'm wrong. We have already talked about in the banner review. We have already talked about this, and this, and not these three. Correct? Correct? Okay, just had to make sure. Did we already talk about the sea? Oh, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. Oh, hold on. Ah. Fishy Jane last time, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna pick back up here at the end of August with the 26 million downloads campaign. And interestingly enough, we've already done Ishtar, Erish Kagal, and MHXA in terms of talking about them and why they're good. So let's talk about the last three here. Minamoto no Raiko has actually really come into her own now in JP. This is largely due to the upgrade to her Buster skill here. Or was it? No, sorry, it's the... Yeah, I believe it's the Buster skill. Yep, there you go. So the 30% charge that she has gotten here has now kind of put her somewhat on par with Arjuna Alter. Arjuna Alter will still outdamage her in a 3-turn unless the niches start coming into play. But the reason that I think that this is really good for her is because, one, those niches for Mama Raiko are pretty, like, wide open. I do think there's quite a bit of capability here for her. Again, it's anti-demonic, which is a lot of stuff. And then it's Earth or Sky Servant. So 2/3 of all servants end up kind of falling underneath this umbrella. So she really has a lot going for her. The thing I have to say, though, at least with regards to her performance, is that she deserved this. She absolutely needed this after, again, for us, like year one players, Mama Raiko was really good in the outset, basically going in even to year two. Mama Raiko was still pretty solid. But as we started transitioning into the quick and then later on the really big arts meta systems, Mama Raiko really fell off, and the reason for this is because she did not have charge. So back during the era where people weren't 3-turning really anyways, she was perfectly fine. But the second we started getting into the era with a single devoted damage dealer where they were able to 3-turn, Mama Raiko somewhat fell off. It's not that she was not good during those times, it's just that she was not meta in the slightest. She still had these niches at play, and they were really solid for her. But getting that 30% charge now allowed her to work in a double Koyanskaya setup with Oberon and just allowed her to really amp damage. Again, you can see everything is on good cooldowns here with her major steroids. So she has the capability of kind of just sitting here and doubling it up. And that's really, really nice for her. So at the end of the day, I think Mama Raiko is in a much better position, especially just as a 3-turn berserker going forward. So for those of you guys that maybe have a multiple MP level of her, rest assured that she will finally be useful again for you guys as we move forward. So certainly, I do think Mama Raiko now, with what we know on JP, is a much better roll target as we go forward. But you don't have to roll for her because there are other options out there like Morgan Le Fay, like Ibuki. So it's totally up to you to determine whether or not you want to go after her in greater quantities or even at all for the first time. But again, I do think Mama Raiko is actually in a good spot now on JP. Next up here, we have Ibuki Doji, and the Ibuki I just mentioned was the Berserker form, but this is her original Saber form. You guys have had the opportunity basically to roll for her pretty much on the pre-banner there for Tunguska, but as we move forward into the year, there's obviously now kind of post-Tunguska not going to be that many opportunities to roll. That being said, this is going to be one of them. I do think Ibuki is basically helped out a lot more now thanks to the presence of Oberon and Koyanskaya. I think prior to their release, Ibuki came out and then was almost immediately overshadowed by Muramasa, who did a lot of the same stuff in terms of being a 50% charger, being a looper. I think being that Castoria synergistic person made a lot of people just overlook Ibuki right at the beginning and then kind of flip over to that art side of things and say, hey, look, I don't need that right now. Now that we've come into the Buster meta again, I believe kind of the tide has changed and a lot more people are looking at Ibuki in a favorable light. It doesn't mean that your Muramasa's bad or anything like that. It just means that Ibuki now has a lot more support and now actually has a dog in the fight, a sort of foot in the door, if you will. Again, having the ability to increase her own attack 3 times 3 turns is somewhat annoying, but just make sure you don't card in the early waves of a 3-turn and you'll be fine. Definitely, this is a little bit of an issue, though, in a challenge environment. Still having a 50% charge right off the bat, unlike, say, someone like OG Saber, who's got 30% and then 20% after her NP, which still can translate into 50% charge for all intents and purposes. That's nice, but having it at 50% on the outset at first sometimes is really useful. The second skill here, basically increasing your Buster performance for 3 turns, also on a 5-turn cooldown, is going to be really solid because it's going to allow you to stack it up as fast as turn 1 and then turn 2, basically getting that double pop there so that you're already set by turn 2 with some amped up firepower. And then again, the increased defense and crit star bomb there are just going to make it easier to card, make you a little bit tankier as you start thinking about challenge orientation. So there is that. She has the ability to seal one enemy's NP for 1 turn, increase her own critical damage by 50% for 3 turns, and then increase her own damage against undead enemies by 50% for 3 turns. And this is all on a 6-turn cooldown, so you can get this on turn 1 and turn 3, doubling it up in effect. This is going to make Ibuki really solid against any undead that are out there, but that is really going to be her major niche in which she stands out. She will be a hard-hitting AoE buster saber for you, but at the end of the day, it's undead that's really going to separate her from the rest of the pack, and it's going to kind of come down to you and how much you like Ibuki and whether or not you see using her in neutral situations where there are undead as to whether or not you want to get more use out of her. Still, I think she can sort of be your serviceable go-to AoE saber, so she is definitely not a bad roll. You can see as well her NP ignores invincibility and defense, so again, somewhat of a rival to Muramasa in that sense, and then further reduces their bust of resistance after damage, so that if you're following it up in a challenge environment, you're good. So I still think Ibuki can be really solid, and the only way in which she kind of struggles is in the way in which a lot of buster will struggle out once you get outside of a 3-turn. So just be careful with her in that regard, and otherwise she's going to be extremely powerful to you, especially thanks to the really high attack stat that she has. Last but not least, we have Amakusa. Amakusa has been a very weird unit for years. When he first comes out, he's super powerful because he has the ability to AoE buff remove with his NP. And then you can see he ends up getting an NP interlude that ends up helping out the damage quite a bit because that has always been Amakusa's big issue. Amakusa's damage has not been good historically. Well, with all of the buffs that he's now gotten, he's actually pretty good now at this point. He's one of your harder hitting AoE rulers. And this is actually a big reason why I believe that there should be more upgrades to the AoE rulers to exceed Amakusa. I think Amakusa at this point needs to be the weakest AoE ruler for no reason other than the fact that he does have AoE buff removal. This is a very strong, very powerful niche, and it's very dangerous for the devs to make units that have this even stronger. So at the end of the day, I think he needs to be sitting at the bottom of the pack because he will always be useful due to this, and simply they need to make other people whose only niche is damage out-damage him. So in that regard, I think Amakusa is in a decent spot right now, at least until buffs come along down the line to sort of correct this. But you can see, he has had some upgrades that at least would make Janu jealous of him, as you can see that he's had the upgrade to his first skill here, giving him NP gen rate of 30% for 3 turns, something she would love to have. The second skill here, his Baptism Rite, started out as Undead and Enemy Drain, and then charging the NP gauge by 20% every turn for 5 turns to, boom, here you go. It reduces any enemy's NP gauge by 1, reduces all enemies' buster resistance for 5 turns by 20%, and then charges the own NP by 20% up front, then followed up by the 20% per turn. So there's a whole lot going on in this skill now, and it's really a strong skill. But at the end of the day, they still come back and upgrade even his third skill. And you can see he basically had the same sort of deal as Janu, where his skill ended up basically stunning an enemy servant. But that's somewhat restrictive, so they just changed it to basically a flat increase to his buster performance. That is to say, in Janu's case, they end up kind of going the route of saying, hey, look, we're not going to make this restricted to servants. In Amakusa's case, they just say, we're just going to help this out by giving it a steroid and making it have a consistent aspect to it. So in that regard, it's good for him. You'll be able to use it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, due to the way the second skill works and the flat 20% charge up front, Amakusa is actually still in a really weird situation. He kind of needs double Oberon, and that's why, no matter how much they actually have given him, he's still not scaled that well in the grand scheme of things, but his damage still is overall good, and double Oberon, at least on the third turn, still deals a ton of damage. So it's not a huge concern for him, but certainly in turns 1 and 2, he may not be up to snuff, just depending on the content that you're facing. That being said, I still find Amakusa to be infinitely more usable and in a much better situation than Janu is at the moment, and Janu is still a absolutely usable unit, so that should tell you quite a bit. So again, I do think Amakusa is a really good unit to have. Another alternative for someone like him would be someone like Summer Abbey, and that low key I think is why they came back in and gave him another buff to kind of bump up his damage quite a bit, is they saw how much damage Summer Abbey was doing, and I think they kind of got threatened by that and realized that, like, yeah, he had gotten passed by someone outside of his class. That being said, I still think he's really usable and really decent in challenge scenarios, so yeah, I basically am going to say they probably went a little overkill at this point, but they have given Summer Abbey some upgrades now too. So it really just depends on how you want to see between which one of those two you want as an AoE buster buff remover. Again, Amakusa, really powerful no matter what changes they make to him. That remove all buffs with NP before damage will always, always, always make him strong. And that's basically it for your 26 million downloads campaign. Again, you can see you get sort of single rate ups here. Basically, here's your schedule. Each one of them should be available for 3 days. Again, in a pending, it may change, but that should be somewhat kept. You can see as well, you do get different variant craft essences that are on rate up with each one of the units. We had already talked about Starry Nights. We had already talked about Bittersweet. I don't remember if we talked about Flower Sunshine. This one's all attack scaling. This one is arts and buster by 15% and overcharge by 2 stages one time. Definitely an interesting one. Maybe not the most powerful for a one-off overcharge type of effect, but I do like the hybrid stats and just how strong they are. So there is quite a bit to be gained from a hybrid unit there. Again, I believe we talked about Princess of the Red Bean Paste here. This one is split stats, and again, it's 50% starting charge, quick performance, and healing received. Again, you can see they just don't like giving a lot of your quick C's actual all attack, but it is what it is. And then down here, we end up with the limited craft essences basically for the male side of this banner. And that is going to be Moment of Silence here, which this one is not bad as a hybrid goes. It's all attack scaling, it's NP Gen by 15, and Quicken Arts by 15 each. So you're going to be getting really good card performance here for getting back to an NP. Basically, Detective Edmund is a interesting one. It's split stats, but the Ignore Invincibility is the real attraction here. It does give you some arts up. I do think there are better Invuln Pure Cs out there, though, so I'm not too keen on this one. Starry Nights we already talked about. Bittersweet we already talked about. Detective Edmund, the Mastermind arc here is, again, split stats. It's NP Gen of 20%, quick performance of 15, and then critical damage of 15 there. So not a bad one, all things considered, other than the split stat on it. And then basically you have a general pool rate up craft essences, which is the One Who Desires Salvation. This is a very, very nice CE, is very, very rarely on rate up, so the fact that it actually is kind of nice. I normally talk about overcharge as if it's a one-off. This is a CE that is an exception for this because it's overcharge NP by 2 stages for 4 times. It is split stats, which actually kind of works to its advantage because one of the best uses for this can actually be to throw this on Castoria, as this means for the next 4 Castoria NPs, she will get a rank 3 overcharge effect off of her MP, giving you basically 3 stacks of Solemn Defense every time she NPs. Remember, it is a unique effect, so you can't overlap it in any way, but it is a really strong C to put on her, assuming you can get the fight done within those first 4 uses of her NP. That should buy you somewhere in the order of like 15 to 20 turns, but it really just depends on what you're trying to do. So be careful with it, but it is very strong if you manage to have it at MLB. We also get new craft essences. This is actually going to be where a new sort of meta CE comes into the game. This one's called Rising Mud Rain. This is still a relatively new CE as far as JP is concerned. This one has 2400 attack scaling, so it's as good as the original Black Grail in it. And that is what this CE actually represents. It is a hybrid, basically, of Black Grail and an overcharged CE. So you can see it increases damage by 50% at MLB, which is already strong, and then overcharges the NP by 2 stages for 1 time. Has a 500% chance to lose 500 HP every turn, which is what it is, but it's not that bad, just like in Black Grail's case. So at the end of the day, this is trading some NP damage for some overcharge. I will tell you flat out who these types of Cs work for. This is going to work for a unit that has the capability with their 2 stages of overcharge of getting more damage than potentially the 30% NP damage they would be trading with an actual MLB Black Grail. And maybe you don't have MLB Black Grail, so maybe that's less of a consideration. And that point, it's only 10% compared to a non-MLB, but that still assumes that you have MLB Rising Mud Rain, which will probably never get an actual rate up. Remember, this is just now available. It's not on rate up in this actual banner. So it is a very strong craft essence at the end of the day, but it's going to be really nice for the people that have offensive overcharges. And in an interesting way, it can also be really useful to Artoria, Mordred, and Lartoria, as each of them have an overcharge that increases their NP their NP charge after their NP. So this can allow Lartoria, Artoria, and Mordred to all quote-unquote Black Grail loop without actually using Black Grail, but instead using the overcharge variant of it. Again, at even 40% NP damage, this is still going to beat the pants off of most 50% CEs that usually give about 20% in modifiers at most. So yeah, you're looking at a really nice upgrade, even if not using an MLB, compared to, again, something else that may be a 50% charge C. The issue at play, though, then will be if you don't have MLB versus an MLB 50% C, the disparity in the attack stat. So just keep that in the back of your head. But still, there is quite a bit of firepower in the CE, definitely if you manage to get it to MLB. So this will represent a new sort of upgrade for people that can actually use it. We do sort of get an upgrade of Win One Strike instead as Menkyo Kaiden. It's still a sure hit CE, but it's also now going to give crit damage, and it's all attack scaling. So kind of a quality of life upgrade, but sadly, the old CE there will end up being retired after that point. And that is your 26 million downloads campaign. And that is all of August. So let's go ahead and go right on into September here. So September starts out with the Advanced Quest Part 8. Again, you can see already at this point, you are in the 9th month and you have received 8 Advanced Quests. They really just start hammering this out alongside the road to 7. And this is actually, I think, where the devs began to panic somewhat. Because again, the content schedule begins to slow down from here somewhat. The banners don't, and so this is still going to be a long video, but you can see that basically you end up with Road to Lost Belt campaign part 4. This is going to be LB4's Road to 7 campaign, and you're only in September, and they still have basically part 5 and part 6 that they have to do before that point, basically before the end of the year. So you can see that they started going like, oh crap, we kind of need to get the ball rolling. So take a look here at the Road to 7 campaign. Yes, this will include some interesting recollection fights, as I'm sure you guys can assume. I'm not going to spoil that for you, but let's go ahead and talk about the summoning campaign, which is the return of Arjuna Altar. Again, Arjuna Altar, as we have mentioned before already, is in a pretty good spot. We just got done talking about Mama Raiko. If you want to hear my analysis of him, go back to the Chaldea Boys one in that segment for the year, as that's where I kind of went over him. Karna as well is a really awesome unit. Jinako we've already talked about. So now we get to start immediately with the 4 stars here. So Rama is an interesting unit. I think at this point he's been somewhat overshadowed by his basically K-pop samurai, as I like to call him, or bowl cut samurai, whose name is escaping me at the moment. But basically the newer single target Buster Saber that's anti-Oni and anti-demonic. Essentially, he is, yes, Watanabe, thank you, chat. He is definitely a somewhat increase in terms of capability over Rama, but as a result, the devs kind of saw that and said, you know what, my boy Rama could use some love, and they come back in and end up giving Rama an upgrade. Rama has never been the most usable saber out of all of them. His big sort of shtick has always been the fact that he does extra damage super effective to demonic enemies. This has made him at times a really good raid killer, a really good boss killer at certain points, but it really just depends on what you're trying to do. And sadly, most of those happened early in FGO's lifespan, not too much of late. His first skill gives him critical star absorption and critical damage for one turn. This may seem weak, but then you actually look at the crit damage and you go, oh, this is 100% crit damage on potentially a 4-turn cooldown. Congratulations, you figured it out. Rama is basically anti-demonic 4-star Sigurd. He basically just goes around critting everything to hell and back, and that's kind of his main shtick. His second skill here is party-wide charisma of 18% on a 5-turn cooldown, and his third skill is grant self-guts status for 1 time 3 turns, revives with 1000 HP and recovers his own HP. Rama doesn't really have any card steroid in his kit. He does have the attack up, but that's it. He doesn't have charge. He doesn't have a hard-hitting steroid. But the good news is that means that he's balanced around not having these things. That is to say that you don't have to worry about a lot of skill up time with Rama because Rama's just going to keep doing it over and over and over again. Certainly the 1 turn of crit damage is going to be a concern, but it is what it is. Even if you don't lure the skill, you can still probably get it up to a 5-turn cooldown, which will secure you a really hard-hitting crit or set of crits every, couple of turns there. So in that regard, I still think Rama can be very usable because you don't have to worry about, like, say, the 3-turn duration on his mana burst that he doesn't have. But again, you can see they end up giving him an NP interlude. He basically now deals damage to one enemy in a greater amount, and then reduces their buster resistance by 20% for 3 turns after his NP, and then drains a demonic enemy by their gauge by 1, which I think is perfectly fair for a unit that is buster and doesn't have charge anywhere, so he's definitely going to end up waiting on that front. And then the overcharge effect, as we mentioned, to deal damage to super effective damage to demonic enemies really helps him out. So I do think Rama is still in a decent spot, but still somewhat difficult to use. And that's mostly due to a lack of charge more than anything. Lakshmi Bai is our next one up here. We haven't had the opportunity to talk about her, I believe. Lakshmi has now had a really nice upgrade as well on JP that has helped bring her a little bit more into the fold. She's always been an AoE quick saber, and she had some interesting uses in the fact that her third skill is actually somewhat defensive and allows her to keep people alive. But the issue, sorry, her second skill. But the third skill allowed her to basically give buff success chance. And that was something that was always really, really nice with her, is the fact that she could kind of function in the same way that Prince of Lanling or even an Ozzy could, in sort of helping somebody else out with their buffing issues. That being said, the devs realized this wasn't really enough, and they came back in and they ended up giving her quick up of 20% to not only help refund, but also damage. And then also NP generate for 3 turns by essentially 20% there as well. So this just makes her a more loopable option as far as a quick AoE goes. And I, for one, am happy to see it because I think this is a huge issue with that both her and Summer Tomoe had. I think at this point, I'd like to see Summer Tomoe get a lot of the same treatment, but I will still accept basically Lakshmi getting some help. Again, you can see the grants one ally invincibility is always going to be strong, and if she used the buff success chance on herself, she will also have a 100% chance to grant them healing, regeneration, and damage cut buffs for 3 turns. So again, this could be a really nice sort of oops, try to like save you. I've actually used her quite a bit in the Saberface runs where she comes in, she pops her guts, maybe like a taunt on her or something, and she kind of distracts the enemy for a little bit while whoever the primary focus of the second skill is manages to kind of get some invuln and some healing so that they're prevented from taking too much damage in the interim. Her first skill here is party attack up for 3 turns, and then again, you can see you've got a 60% chance, but if you do use her third skill on herself, an increase to the party's crit star generation and crit damage by up to 50%, all on a 5-turn cooldown. So, like I said, I just think Lakshmi has a really, really nice kit. She deals damage to all enemies, and then her NP can remove offensive buffs. Not the best thing in the world, but not too bad. Again, it's going to get rid of annoying stuff like invuln pierce for you, so it's definitely, at least somewhat nichely useful. And her overcharge effect reduces their critical attack chance for 3 turns. That, again, if you're going to be looping over a challenge enemy, means that you're going to actually be able to sit there and just keep stacking crit downs. Really, really nice and effective at kind of keeping the party in a good spot health-wise. But that is Lakshmi in a nutshell. She's a permanent unit, just like Rama. Same thing with Nezha here. Nezha has had some upgrades. I still think that Nezha needs some help. I don't really like Nezha's current status, and you'll see why. She's got quick and burst performance for 3 turns of 20% each. The steroids aren't too big, but she's balanced around it. An increase to her critical damage for 3 turns of 30%. And then the self-gut status for 1 time over 5 turns, and the charge to her own gauge of 20%. So the 20% charge is decent, but it's not like enough in most cases. That's kind of my issue with Nezha, is the fact that not only is this on a 7-turn cooldown, but it's only the 20%. So if you want a 3-turn with Nezha, you're looking at a double Oberon type of setup, maybe with something like, I don't know, MLB K-Scope or something like that. So it's not really conducive to damage for Nezha. The third skill here is the one that's gotten the upgrade. It removes her own debuffs here and then increases her own critical star absorption for 1 turn. And then it got upgraded to give her basically a damage niche against demonic as well as defense against them. So it did give her a way to stand out. But at the end of the day, like I said, the issue is going to end up being that charge and how you're able to work her in a 3-turn. If you take her outside of a 3-turn, certainly there's a lot of capability here. Again, having a self-cleanse is always going to be useful. So I do at least think that Nezha is serviceable, but I do think that she could use a little bit more love, particularly to the second skill. I would love to see it upgraded to 30%. Her NP has had its interlude. She deals damage to all enemies, inflicts burn of 3,000 for 5 turns to them, and then increases her own NP damage for 1 turn by 20%. This is at least nice for using her with Oberon, which you would have to do, because it gives her an overcharge effect that will scale basically multiplicatively with his 3rd skill. Next up, we have Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama is story locked, so he's kind of difficult to get your hands on. But Hot Wheels, as we like to call him, is actually a pretty strong single-target archer. He is primarily Buster, but you could honestly argue that he's Buster-Quick hybrid. And that is because of the way that his kit works. And the big thing to take away from him is the fact that he is a 1 HP memer, as I like to call him. So again, you can see he's got a 5-hit single-target NP that deals damage to 1 enemy, removes their defensive buffs after. This is the drawback to Hot Wheels, as far as I'm concerned. Not having buff removal before the NP means that in order to get the buffs off the enemy, in order to damage them, you gotta waste an NP in terms of damage first. So I don't really like that. That's where instead you're gonna want to take some sort of like invuln pierce or something like that. But hey, it is what it is. At least he has it. So even if he can't manage to maybe deal enough damage with the first NP, he could certainly remove it after the fact. And even if you manage to, like, say, wait out a solemn defense or invuln, but he maybe has, like, some really strong defensive buffs here, at least he's going to be, like, getting rid of those and stuff, any sort of residuals after the fact. But you can see, again, he is a 1 HP memer. Basically, his overcharge effect means that he deals more damage the less health he has. So combining him with someone like Chen Gong is really useful because, again, he can kind of be ulted down to nothing and then have him fire off an NP for even greater effect. You can see his kit here grants him a self-invincibility for 1 turn and a self-charge of 30%. So he at least has that capability due to the cooldown here of being able to be forced into a 3-turn. But that assumes that you need to 3-turn with a Buster system against a single unit, which may or may not be a precarious situation anyways, in case you don't have enough damage to kill. The second skill here increases his own buff performance for 3 turns by 30%. Grants self on debuff, debuff on attack, buff for 3 attacks for 5 turns. That basically allows him to inflict defense down whenever he uses his Buster cards. His third skill here is basically quick performance up of 30% for 3 turns. That also has an effect whenever you use his quick cards that increases crit damage for 3 turns. So again, quite a bit of stackability here, but one, each of these effects is limited, unlike, say, Melt, where the crit damage just can scale throughout 3 turns without a limitation on the attacks. But two is the issue here at play where, yes, he is a 1 HP memer, but no, he doesn't have guts to really facilitate that. That's what's going to make Ashwataman a little bit harder to use. You got to be a little bit careful with him. You're going to need some sort of supply of something like that. Or again, just try to find a way to get him naturally low before you fire off the NP. But that is a risky maneuver, so just keep that in the back of your mind. Still, Ashwataman can deal a ton of damage, and his card performance is actually pretty good. So in a challenged environment, he can be really solid as far as units go. Next up here is William Tell. He is permanent. William Tell is a single target arts sort of archer here. He does have the ability to seal one enemy skills for 1 turn with a crit star bomb of 30. This is a substantial amount. So again, it is really nice for an arts unit to have stars, as it's just going to help feed that engine. It's going to basically make them have the capability of soaking stuff to their arts card and then getting back to another NP regardless of their charge status. The second skill here basically has had its upgrade, and you can see it increases his own damage performance for 3 turns, grants himself debuff immunity for 3 turns, and then to make things clear for you, just understand that this is a lot of hullabaloo about giving him extra damage for marking, and hello? There we go. Okay, so there's Mike. I can't hear music, Jack, can you? No music? Okay, give me 1 second. You guys can hear the music now? I'm glad I caught that. So, like, you guys didn't see it, but I saw my mixer start to go crazy. Every once in a while, like, my mixer has a major hiccup, and that's usually the issue. And, like, I was like, oh shit, right? Like, because I did not want, I did not want that to happen. So I very quickly hit pause, and managed to make it work, but, that was interesting. I'm just making sure everything's coming through the right broadcast channel because I don't want anything to mess up here. Quick draw cat, yeah, pretty much. Okay, we'll pick up where we left off. Sorry about that. Like I said, I have no idea why that happened. I'm just trying to think of mentally where I was. So the whole purpose of this extra stuff down here is to talk about the marking buff that he gives, which is where he'll deal extra damage whenever there's evasion. The easy way to make sense of it is just simply that he is going to now search for evasion on subsequent turns. So instead of it being a one-time thing, he has extra turns to potentially get the extra damage here, which is really nice because it gives him some leeway as to when to use this, especially with the 3 turns of arts up. Again, I do think it's a nice upgrade. Maybe not the best upgrade for him, but it is something. And then his third one here is the increase to his critical star absorption and critical damage for 1 turn each by 1,000 and 100. This is actually really strong given the 30 crit star bomb on his third skill here. And that's where you actually see, or sorry, his first skill there. That's where you actually see a lot of Tell getting used. Ironically enough, there's not too many opportunities to use him for the ability to get extra damage against dodging targets. His MP ignores evasion anyways, and then deals damage to 1 enemy. And again, deals extra damage, basically super effective 200% to any enemy that has the marking status on them. But where I see most uses of Tell, ironically enough, ends up being as an arts crit archer, where he can maybe take out a single enemy with some charge coming from external sources, and then maybe manage to allow for extra sort of capability of taking out a wave with crits. The screen is for. I hate you, William Tell. No, not that. Yeah, there you go. Sorry about that. Thank you, chat. Okay, yeah, that's the one. Let me quickly go delete that. That doesn't end up. Cat is trying to leave Camelot. Apparently. And then his second skill here has had its upgrade, as he has Arts Performance up for 3 turns of 30%, granting debuff immunity for 3 turns, and then basically a whole hullabaloo here about his marking debuff that grants him extra damage on his NP. Essentially, it's just instead of being a snapshot looking for evasion, it's now going to instead give him the capability of having extra turns to find that evasion. So it's really going to help out his NP getting extra damage and basically free you up to being able to pop this skill with the 3 turns of Arts Performance rather than having to wait until the enemy dodges. His third skill here is going to increase his own critical star absorption and critical damage for 1 turn by 1,000 and then 100%. So again, in combination with this first skill being a 30 crit star bomb, is really, really nice, as that's going to allow him to be able to crit very hard. And that's actually where I see William Tell being used more as a crit archer, where maybe he's able to function somewhat, get to his NP, maybe with overflow charge from like Castorius or something, but be able to crit down a wave and then NP something else, basically to help you out, or just act as an engine for people to be able to crit a singular wave in and of itself. You name it. Again, you can see his NP is a 3-hit single target arts NP. It ignores evasion for 1 turn, deals damage to 1 enemy, and then deals extra damage to any enemies with evasion or marking status. Again, it did kind of add this in here, and now you can see he has sort of that capability to have it be either or. So definitely an interesting unit now in William Tell, but not necessarily the best option for a lot of situations. And then we get to Asclepius here. I don't remember if I've talked about Asclepius or not already at this point, but he is a story locked support unit. He is very stellar. He's got a triple arts deck, And again, actually, I believe I have talked about Asclepius, so I will defer you guys to kind of that prior point in the video. Just understand, again, he has the sort of total debuff control here and the ability to cleanse and kind of charge the party and support them with NP gain. So he's a really, really nice unit for basically just controlling the flow of battle and making sure that your units are not completely debilitated. So again, he's relatively rare, being story locked as a 3-star, so not the worst of ideas to try and gain copies of him at any additional point, and there is always the coin consideration there. So that is going to be your banner right there. Again, you can see sort of the hodgepodge of all the units at play here. Basically, there's just a rotational rate up between the 3 SSRs, whereas everybody else is on rate up in the interim. This does make it a little bit less desirable because it means you have a 4-way 4-star split, and that's not that ideal. Certainly as well, you could get screwed and get all William Tells and no Asclepiuses, so I don't think this is the best banner to roll on, but at the end of the day, if you just find that this one's better positioned compared to earlier in the year with Arjuna Altar, or again, any of the other options, then it may be the right banner for you. You can see this is also where you will get another crack at the 4-star CE from Yuga Kestra, aka the basically the story limited CE that can only be rolled in the story banner that you're gifted a copy of at the end of LB4. If you want to collect an MLB variant of it, this would be an easy time to roll when it's actually on rate up, and don't expect it to be on rate up outside of that, but it is what it is. Again, we had the recollection quests, basically some interesting stuff, Twitter campaigns, yada, yada, yada. And again, we ended up having the strengthening here for basically Lakshmi Bai's guts here that really helped her out. Again, lowering the cooldowns and giving her the quicken NP gain. And then Nezha basically giving her the anti-demonic niche right here. You also ended up having the Da Vinci Workshop for the one that carries Fortune, which is a pretty decent command code. It's whenever engraved on a quick card, increases the critical star absorption of the card by 100%. There's not too many variants of this out there. I believe there is a Buster and an Arts one, but there's not too many copies, so kind of having the capability to have this can be really useful if you want a particular unit's card to soak everything. It's also where they got the Unity update for 2020, again in a quickly followed suit after that, so nothing too much really besides that. Then next up, we had the 2600 days anniversary. This is just usually as you know, par for the course, where you're going to just get 10 free courts. It's just another milestone. And then we get to Guru Gura Shin Yamatai Koku 2022. So this is, in effect, Gura 6 at this point, or is it Gura 7? No, this is Gura 7. This is going to end up being your sort of Senno Rikyo banner, as well as EO as the welfare. I do find that the welfares are rather nice going forward, and EO is definitely one of them. Just quickly kind of covering what it is that she does. I'm going to quickly hop in here into event bonus and kind of give you guys the quick rundown. So EO, while you won't be able to roll her, she will be available. EO is really useful for basically 2 reasons. One, she's an AoE arts looping ruler. That's nice. There are a couple of 90++ nodes out there that use basically a moon cancer in them, and as a result, EO just happens to be a really good counter to that. Again, she's anti-divine. She ends up having NP charge and critical star absorption and damage for her arts cards, including a 100% arts crit. Really helps out with the carding power. She increased the critical damage of wild beast allies, but that's not that big of a deal. And really, the claim to fame here is going to end up being the NP, which increases her own NP damage by 10% for 3 turns. So she gets stronger the more she loops, deals damage to all enemies, inflicts evil curse status to them, and inflicts curse for 3 turns to all enemies. Nothing too much to write home about, but she is just a very solid anti-divine, high crit damage, loopable arts ruler that you will get for free. Again, I'll go over her more when we actually get to the proper event. And then basically, let's go to the summoning campaigns. So you can see this first one here is going to be Senno Rikyo. Senno Rikyu. I find that a lot of people probably don't care too much for her overarching design, and you can kind of see why. It's a little standoutish. The big issue I think at play here is the creepy like hands that she kind of has at the bottom there. Those are not feet. Um, and so I think a lot of people probably won't roll for her, but I think the truth will belie that somewhat in that I think a lot of people are going to look at her, they're going to see she's an AoE quick berserker, and they're going to write her off. The reality here is Sinnoh is actually a Black Grail looping AoE quick berserker and pretty dang strong. You can see she is a rare unit that has a triple quick deck, 5 hit counts on that, 0.7 NP gain rate, definitely not bad. Relatively high attack at 12.4 there, so a lot kind of going for her in her favor. Her first skill here is quick up for 3 turns of up to 20%, NP gen for the party for 3 turns. So again, each of these being party-wide here. And then critical stars of 15 for a nice star bomb there to lead you off in a 3-turn cadence if you want to crit. Her second skill here charges one ally's gauge by 30%, so it is targetable. Overcharges their NP 2 stages for 1 time over 3 turns, making her able to work as a option for a quick variant of the Immortal comp. Definitely interesting there. And then grants them invincibility for 1 attack 3 turns, so definitely a strong skill in that one. Her third skill here increases her own critical damage for 3 turns, basically increasing her own crit damage of quick cards for 3 turns beyond that. So 100% right there for quick cards, 50% for everything else. And then a debuff on attack buff for inflicting defense down whenever she attacks with her quick cards. So really, really strong in that regard, as she's just going to keep getting stronger against a singular enemy. You see she does have unique madness enhancement, territory creation, and then basically her own unique NP gain buff here to increase the NP generation of her quick cards. Kind of nice. I actually wish they would come back around and turn this into an actual like effect that a support gave to quick units, just maybe with even more NP gain added on it. And I think that would actually help out quite a bit. You can see her Noble Phantasm deals damage to all enemies, seals their NP for 1 turn, so as you're looping against them, they're not gaining charge against you. And then inflict curse for 1,000 damage for 5 turns to them. It's also going to deal extra damage to those with the man attribute, which does work for a non-buster unit, since while Queen Skya provides a man attribute niche, she's kind of limited somewhat to buster. So having this on a quick unit is a-okay, and you can already see just from like Morgan Le Fay how often this can happen to pop off for you. So this is really, really a strong unit, and I think a lot of people are going to undersell this unit. This unit has a lot of capability. So again, Sinnoh, pretty amazing unit that probably a lot of people will sleep on. In the meantime, though, we get to, as far as I'm concerned, one of the worst designed units that FGO has released in the past couple years. You're going to see why. This is Yamanami Keisuke, aka Keisuke as we like to call him. Keisuke is that unit that like everyone seems to forget about, and I don't blame them. And it's because if you look at his kit, there's just not a lot going for it. Again, you can see he has low attack even for a 4-star. He is a saber here. He's double quick, double arts cards, which is at least decent for NP gain. His first skill here increases the party's attack for 3 turns by 20%. Second skill increases the party's generation rate for 3 turns by 20%. The third skill is a crit star bomb. Seem familiar? Yeah, it's literally Sinnoh first skill, but instead it's attack instead of quick, and just kind of like less stars. The second skill here is Beauty of Nature C. It's going to increase quick and arts performance for himself for 3 turns by 30% each and charge his gauge by 20%. Well, that seems interesting. Seems potentially good, right? Then the third skill grants party evasion for 1 attack 3 turns that kind of everyone seems to have at this point. It's basically your Harp of Healing effect. It's going to heal the party and then remove ailment debuffs. So pretty nice in that regard. A somewhat usable skill. His passive skills are okay, I guess. They're just not really a lot to them. And then you get to his NP. It is an arts NP because it's support. It's going to increase the party's attack for 3 turns, again, dependent on NP level. It's going to gain 10 crit stars every turn for 3 turns. And then it's going to increase the critical damage of Shinsengumi servant allies by 50% for 3 turns. This is the major niche that he provides. It's crit to Shinsengumi servant allies. This is my issue with Keisuke. He fails as a niche support. That is to say, I don't really find what he does to be that useful compared to just taking an actual meta support. His devotion to the Shinsengumi is just absolutely trounced by basically many other supports that are out there. And that's why I just really don't see him actually being a decent option for a lot of things. He does have the ability to charge the party's NP gauge with his NP, but it is base 10%, and he does not have overcharge in his kit. So this is not a strong overcharge skill. If this had managed to been, I don't know, 20, 30%, you may have been on to something. But at 10%, nah, I can't really get behind this. There are plenty of other units that manage to do this just flat out better yet again. So at the end of the day, I have to point to someone like, say, Nobukatsu and say, Nobukatsu is a cheaper unit that does more for his devoted sort of niche that just ends up kind of better and kills himself so that he rotates the party. Keisuke doesn't even have the decency to do that. And that's kind of my issue. He is an undertuned 4-star. He has the equivalent of what I would consider to be a 2 or a 3-star kit. I think Keisuke needs some major buffs if they ever want anyone to care about him. Certainly people will roll for him because they just find him hot or something like that. But at the end of the day, I am going to say that that is basically... What the fuck? Come on, man. Go... Oh, thank you? Like, what the shit, Windows? I had to actually stop the recording there. Like... At the end of the day, I don't really feel like Keisuke is that worth it. So, rolling for Senno Rikyo, actually great, but rolling for Keisuke should probably not be anyone's goal unless they're a devoted Shinsengumi collector. And again, hopefully he gets some upgrades into the future. Next up, we've got Mori Nagayoshi. Mori is a rare limited 3-star alongside his compatriot Izo. Again, he is a 3-star berserker. He is very interesting in how he's used. Kind of to start out with, you can see his NP ignores invincibility for 1 turn and deals damage that ignores defense buffs to 1 enemy. He will also reduce their defense for 3 turns after the fact. So, I'm okay with his NP being where it is, but I think his NP is not the real reason that you're going to use him. The real reason is going to lie kind of in this first skill here. He increases his own critical damage for 3 turns by 100%. So 3 turns of 100% crit damage. Increases his own debuff resistance by 100% for 3 turns, but then has a 500% chance to reduce his own buff success rate by 100% for 3 turns treated as a buff. What this means is that, like, because it's treated as a buff, it's a demerit that you're not going to be able to stop or get rid of. That's kind of the issue that you're going to run into play with that. So you kind of need to pop this skill last, basically, in a sequence. The second skill has had its upgrade, and I'm glad it did, where it just grants himself a buff on attack buff now for 3 turns that essentially will increase his own attack for 3 turns whenever he attacks. Again, the way this used to be is 3 attacks, 3 turns. It was a bullshit limitation that, yeah, he's a 3-star, but it really didn't need to do this because Mori was never really the strongest unit anyways. So just making it 3 turns, I think the devs kind of looked at that and decided, yeah, it was overly punishing that it was limited to 3 attacks. So they just gave him 3 full turns of it and thus allow you to kind of go ham if you wanted to try and solo with him. But basically, he's got a 500% chance to reduce his own defense by 10% for 3 turns whenever he does attack as well, so be careful with that. And then his third skill here increases his own critical star absorption for 1 turn by 5,000%, the actual amount that he does need, and grants himself an on death activate buff for 3 turns that will gain 20 critical stars whenever he's defeated. So, interestingly enough, this has some sacrifice uses, but I'm going to say it's not the best of situations, because the real reason you're going to want to be using Mori is kind of just to card things out, crit people really hard, and just keep going ham. He's kind of going to be best used as a like weird sort of solo unit or with some protection, but if you take units alongside him, they're going to take cards from him, kind of limiting his effectiveness. And the problem is, with the way this second skill works, the more he attacks, the more damage he's going to keep doing, but also at the same time, the more he is going to become susceptible to getting one shot. Again, he is a squishy berserker. He's only got 8k HP. He's got no hard survivability in his kit, as you can see. And as a result, that's going to kind of be the issue with using him. He is the epitome of a glass cannon. But if you can feed him, you can do some really fun stuff with him. So again, that is going to be your first banner there. You can see your 5-star CE here is Resentment from the Underworld. It is all attack scaling, invuln pierce, buster performance of 5%, and NP damage of 20%. This is actually a really, really nice CE, particularly if you're buster, but certainly even if you're not, the 20% NP damage and ignore invincibility is still somewhat useful. Plus, the all attack scaling means it's a good candidate for leveling should you so choose. The rest of the Cs, nothing too much to write home about. And then we get to banner number 2, which is the return of Maonobu. Now, I talked about Maonobu in prior months, but Maonobu is the epitome of a unit that, as I've said before, be careful of who you make fun of in high school. Maonobu ends up as a unit that was quite reviled when she first came out by most of the community. I, for one, never really held it against her. I don't know why people did. I saw a lot of sort of bad logic applied to Maonobu. That is to say, there were a lot of knee-jerk reactions. And this happens because when Maonobu first came out was right after. She was the first SSR, the first new SSR, released after Arjuna Altar. So there was this knee-jerk reaction of, oh my god, let's all roll for Arjuna Altar, and then why does anyone need any other unit other than Arjuna Altar? Nobu didn't release in the best state, and as a result, that just made people basically dog her even harder. I think if the reverse had been true and Maonobu had come out before Arjuna Altar, you would not have seen nearly the same perception as we did basically when it happened. So, and that very well could have happened because back during that time, Gouda 4 and LB 4 were both kind of deadlocked, and the devs had to come out and apologize for a delay and say they wanted to force LB 4 out first because they had promised it. However, it is entirely possible that if circumstances had been different, they would have forced out Gouda 4 first instead, making Maonobu come out before LB 4 and thus getting probably just better treatment. But again, when she comes out, everybody takes a look at their kit, they don't see the usefulness in it, and they basically started really dogging her. And the chip that I have on my shoulder about Maonobu is, despite some of the kind of horrible states that we have had certain SSRs in, we saw tier lists back then creating whole new lower tiers specifically to put Maonobu in. And that just was not true. Maonobu was an infinitely more usable unit than some of those units ever had been. So to me, it just struck me as a huge knee-jerk reaction and a ton of bias. And is one of the big sort of examples that I try to use to tell people this is why you don't look at tier lists. They kind of end up being unhelpful and giving you the wrong idea. So, was Maonobu a usable unit when she first came out? The answer to that is yes, absolutely. I saw a lot of claims that the reason that she was bad was because her NP damage was low. I think that one's decently fair. I think the claims that there's no one divine to use her against were hogwash. I think the claims that, oh, she's a crit-based unit as an Avenger were, and you can't get stars on her, were also hogwash. I've pointed this out time and time again. I talked about it with Jalter when we went over her earlier, that the solution to feeding stars to a Berserker or an Avenger that doesn't have Star Soak is to flood the party. So to me, this was a master issue where a lot of people were criticizing Maonobu for their inability to think and to be able to problem solve and to be able to give a unit the things that it needed to succeed in. And that's kind of what got proven to be true over time as Maonobu has become really, really scary. So, you can see Maonobu had high attack. Maonobu had a triple buster deck. And when Maonobu first comes out, you can see this sort of slant towards, hey, I am a powerful carding unit. And yet, the majority of the community wanted to look at her NP damage numbers and focus on that. And that's kind of the issue. That's why I said. So to me, they were missing the forest for the trees. They would then turn and look at a tree and say, I can't handle that tree. It's on fire. And that's kind of what happened, as they could not figure out how to get Maonobu to crit because they were small brain. So, as you take a look here, you can see this will grant her attack up that increases every turn for 3 turns. Long story short, basically at rank 10 of the skill, it kind of just keeps going up and up and up. And it basically ends up being, I believe, 30, 50, and 70%. I'm not sure really what the hell fandom has done with the display here, because it did not used to look this way. But essentially, it just gets stronger each turn, and it is a very, very powerful skill. Keep in point, this is all on a 5-turn cooldown. Then we get to the second skill. Grant self invincibility for 1 turn, increases own buff removal resistance for 1 turn. Definitely a good survival skill that had buff removal resistance. So you weren't going to kill Maonobu by, kind of trying to strip her of her buffs. Then we get to the third skill that gains critical stars every turn for 3 turns and charges her own NP gauge, basically by 20%, all on a 5-turn cooldown. So, when she first releases, Maonobu doesn't have a lot of extra firepower. Maonobu doesn't have a lot of charge. She was intended to be balanced around carding and carding hard, and yet a lot of people, like I said, chose to focus on the NP damage. Well, the devs heard that, and they recircled and said, why don't we buff the second skill? Which then will increase the damage against Sky attribute enemies when on Burning Battlefield for 3 turns. Here's the thing. She has a 500% chance based off the first skill here to grant Burning Battlefield buff for 3 turns. So, she is one of the few people that can just change the battlefield to benefit herself and her own kit. So as a result, anything that's Sky attribute, basically then, while that first skill is active, you're getting extra damage against. How much? 50%, all on a 6-turn cooldown. Then we get to the third skill. This one recently got its buff on an A. Third skill gets upgraded to now charge her own NP gauge by 30% instead of 20%, and it added Buster performance when on Burning Battlefield for 3 turns of 30%. So they increased charge by 10%, and they added a 30% steroid where it didn't exist before. Non-conditional. I mean, I guess you could say it's conditional with the Burning Battlefield. The whole point is, now, this means with a 30% charge skill that you can utilize her in a double Koen Skya setup. And now Maonobu became the monster. This first skill can be doubled up by turn 2, basically, because you can do it on turn 1 and 2 since the 5-turn cooldown, giving you 120% extra attack by turn 3. Attack. The second skill here can be doubled up by using it on turns 1 and 3, giving her 100% power mod against Sky attribute, and still, even before the third turn, still 50%. And the third skill can be doubled up, giving her 60% Buster up by activating it on turns 1 and turn 2. Though the reality is you're going to activate it on turn 3 because of the 30% charge here. You're going to need the cadence there for that to work really well. But again, you can see this has the makings of a monster. That's a ton of steroids in her kit. And what does her MP do? Well, it removes all divine enemies' defensive buffs, activating first. So not all defensive buffs, just divine enemies. Then it deals damage, inflicts burn for 1,000 to 5 turns for them, and then deals super effective damage against divinity enemies. Guess what divinity enemies tend to be? Sky attribute. So you have got a ton of damage rolling around here. And this is why I've said Mao Nobu has the potential to be the strongest AoE Avenger out of all of them now. So the people that created a D rank for Mao Nobu that didn't exist before, man, they really had to eat crow over time on her, and I've enjoyed watching every second of it. So again, Mao Nobu is a really, really solid option for your AoE Avenger. You can forcibly 3-turn with her, and so the only conditions that I think people are going to want to see met is, are you facing Divine? Are you facing Sky? Even if you're not, still good damage, but if you are, crazy damage. So again, I do think she's in a much, much, much better spot now on JP compared to where she is. And she is in the upper echelon of damage dealers. That being said, out of all the power creepy damage dealers that are up there, she deserves it. Definitely deserves it for the amount of flack that she caught. Next up, we have Hijikata. Hijikata is a really interesting unit. He is a case where he comes out as well, and he's not that good. And the reason is because he needs something in his kit that he didn't have that would have really helped his usability. So you can see he starts out being single target buster type of unit here for Berserker, and he increased the party's bust performance for 3 turns by 20%. Not that strong, but it is party wide. Party's critical generation rate of 20% for 3 turns. And again, the second skill here, basically starting out as a disengage where it will cleanse and heal, and then being added to basically now have a guts of 1 time 3 turns, reviving him at 1 HP, which is rather weak, but it is stackable with other guts. This is really nice. I cannot express how good this is. This is the epitome of a unit getting the upgrade that they truly most desired. And in Hijikata's case, the reason for this is because he didn't have guts prior to this. He needed guts because his NP deals more damage the less health he has. He is a 1 HP memer. So giving this man guts absolutely saved him and made him a lot more usable. We get to his third NP that has had its upgrade, and again, the way to understand this one is that it's a 30% charge skill on a 5-turn cooldown, allowing him to forcibly be 3-turnable. But it is also a skill that allows him to deal more crit damage the less health he has. So not only does he deal more NP damage, he now will also deal more crit damage. Really, really a strong setup for dealing a lot of damage if you can get him into a low health state. And again, you can see it will deal 1,000 damage without killing him, which is ideal as well. So, then we get to his NP. It has had its NP interlude. It just deals even more damage now, and they expanded the amount of modifier for how much damage it does. So you can see the base modifier here was 600% additional damage. Now it is 800%. That is some wicked scaling on an NP overcharge to allow it to do crazy damage. So really, really strong for him in that regard. But again, Hijikata, somewhat clunky to use because of needing to probably Qigong him or something to get him low, but still really solid now as far as Berserkers go. Himiko. So Himiko, interestingly enough, is the initial option for using the Invincible comp on NA. She was available before Morgan Le Fay and had the capability of being combined with Castoria and Merlin to do some crazy stuff. To me, she's the more defensive version because she is a ruler and she relies a little bit more on critting rather than firing off AoE NPs, but she can get the job done. She's got decent attack. It's not the worst. It's not the best. It's just okay. Thick HP. And again, double buster cards to go with her NP. Her first skill increases the party's attack for 3 turns by 20%, but that's not really going to necessarily be why you use it. It's because it grants the party 8 critical star regeneration buff for 3 turns. So what does that mean? That sounds like that's 8 stars per turn over 3 turns for a total of 24 stars. That's decent, right? Like nothing too much to write home about. The reality is it's party-wide, so it grants everyone in the party that buff. So that isn't 24 stars over 3 turns. That is 72 stars over 3 turns. And it is very strong at securing crits. All on a 5-turn cooldown. So low cooldown, high uptime. Really, really strong for a skill. Her second skill here increases her own bush performance for 3 turns by 30% and gives her anti-demonic niche against enemies of 50% for 3 turns. The issue here is she doesn't have an offensive NP. She gets the job done using crits. She will also grant herself invincibility for 1 turn, so again, you do at least have survival, hard survival there. She will charge her own MP gauge with her third skill by 50% and increase the critical star absorption and critical damage of her Buster cards for the turn that she pops that. Again, 100% Buster crit with all them stars flying around. That's going to do some damage. So, really, really nice. She does have some nice passive skills here, being immune to poison and curse. And again, territory creation to help out the NP game. Her Noble Phantasm increases the party's Buster performance for 3 turns. And again, that will scale with the number of copies that you have. You really don't need multiple copies here. The proof is going to be in the pudding, but basically using Himiko is the main attraction. Yes, the NP is nice, but at the end of the day, you're just going after them Buster crits. So yes, getting more NP levels will make you hit harder with the Buster cards, but no, it is not essential to have them. Again, the overcharging of the party's NP by 2 stages for 1 time over 3 turns is also really good, as like I said, that will feed basically the Invincible comp. You'll set Himiko first, have Merlin and Castoria then after that, and watch as Castoria gets a ton of stacks of solemn defense. It's also why I say it's the more defensive option. Morgan Le Fay only grants 1 stage for 1 time over 3 turns, whereas Himiko grants 2 stages, which means basically you're going to have a 5 stack of solemn defense out of Castoria when you use Himiko in that comp, making it pretty much impossible for most enemies to get through that without some extra shenanigans. And then it will further increase the party's critical damage for 3 turns by 50%. So again, spicy Buster crits. The way to think about it is she is a much tankier form of effectively Super Orion. And that's kind of the way to go about it. Start getting that NP off, you start getting that crit stacking, and you just start going to town, to pound town, basically, on the enemies. So I do feel like Himiko is a really usable unit, still very strong, never has not been strong. Next up here, we have Okita Soji. Okita is, I think, still probably a underappreciated unit by most of the server. I think a lot of people really like her, so in that regard, she's good. She's always been very popular. But what a lot of people don't realize about Okita is that Okita has some of the best card performance among Sabers. And that is a big reason why she's often used in min turns and speed clear comps, is because Okita can kind of do what other Sabers need support to do. That is to say, she can kind of like crit and get back to her NP fairly easy. So you can see she has decent attack power at 12k there. Not a whole lot of HP to trade off, but a 1.09 NP gain rate and a 10.2 star gen rate there. And you can see, again, she has 2 quick cards with 5 hits, a single arts card with 2 hits, really good NP gain, really good star generation, and she still has the writing trait to help out that even more. She does have 2 one-hit Buster cards, not too much going on there in terms of star generation, but at least you'll have good damage when you lead with those. Her first skill is where I have a bone to pick with this. She increased her own quick performance for 1 turn of 50% on a 5-turn cooldown. I would have loved to have seen this skill get a 3-turn duration. That is really all that she needed to really just become insane. They did not need to give her more firepower. They just needed to make this a 3-turn duration or give her an NP interlude. In fact, Okita gets this buff at a time where a lot of other sabers are getting NP interludes. But they kind of shortchanged Okita. They don't give her the NP interlude. Instead, they give her the upgrade to Shukuchi. And the way this one works is, yes, she still gets the 1 turn of quick performance of 50%, but now she also has a 1 turn buff on attack, which increases her own attack by 20% for 1 turn when normal attacking, activating first. So, to explain this, the way Okita had been used pretty much previously was to NP and then go into her cards in an effort to sort of loop back without a lot of support being necessary. This allowed for some really hilarious scenarios where Oki just kind of kept looping over the top of people with crits, and it just really, was a sight to behold. What this upgrade, though, incentivizes is it incentivizes you to use your cards first and then go into the NP. And the reason why is because you're going to get the attack up stacking, so that's going to allow you to potentially get more damage from your NP. I don't like this because I think the devs saw the way Okita was being used and said, she's got tuberculosis. We don't necessarily want her popping off as well as she is, because you can look at her summer design and see just how demerited they made her, how, she stuns herself in that and that she's not really made to loop too well. And you can see what their plans were for Okita in that regard. I think they tried to somewhat sabotage and rein in Okita's playstyle here. It's not that this upgrade made her worse. It's that they tried to change the way the community was using her into basically making you attack before the NP rather than after. And I don't like that. Certainly, this could still be used after. It just means that you would gain less benefit from it. But I digress a little bit too much here, and again, I'm just going to say that this upgrade could have been better. Her second skill has had an upgrade as well. It started out as just an increase to her critical star absorption for 1 turn by 1,000, and then gets upgraded to now have 30% charge, meaning, again, that you're going to have some capability to 3-turn with her as a result on a low cooldown, and now it will also increase crit damage by 50% as well for the turn that you pop it. So they do at least help Okita's card performance there in that sense. Though, to be honest, I would have also liked to see an upgrade to the star absorption, maybe up to like 1,500 or something. She didn't need a huge jump, but I'm going to say everyone's probably experienced that point where they've tried to use the star soak on Okita and had it just not soak all the stars. And that kind of gets somewhat annoying. Her third skill has remained untouched. It is a hard survival for 1 turn here with the evasion and critical damage of 40% here. So again, they gave her even more crit damage on top of this. This is why I kind of said I would have liked to have seen the star absorption upgrade. But again, at the end of the day, it's perfectly fine. Again, her writing performance is E because they are somewhat afraid of her performance, but it is what it is. She's balanced with that in mind. Her NP has not had its interlude, unlike a lot of the other single-target sabers. It is a 3-hit single-target NP that ignores defense, and then will reduce their defense after the fact, again, kind of leading to that challenge min-turn environment, where you're just going to start hitting harder and harder against the thing that you keep NPing against. I hope at some point she does get the NP interlude. I think she could be in a better spot on JP as a result of that. She's getting somewhat left behind some of the crazy other factors. And if she gets that NP interlude, she'll actually probably rocket up to right behind Musashi. But at the end of the day, I'm still largely okay with her performance, and she will always be somewhat of a strong unit just due to the nature of her year 1 kit. Next up, we have Izumo no Okuni. This is another unit you guys have recently had on NA. Izumo is a single target quick caster. She ends up having the double quick cards here, and realistically, I think she has a somewhat synergistic kit that helps her out. She has quick combustion performance for 3 turns of 30% each, and self-evasion for 2 attacks 3 turns, giving her some sort of malleability as to like, you can kind of pop this one for damage, and then she'll still have survival carrying on throughout the turns. Again, even though she does have an emphasis on Buster cards, she does at least have the double Buster deck. And as we've mentioned before, double quick, double Buster deck, actually pretty decent combination for Scotty setups due to the fact that Summer Scotty ends up buffing Buster card crit damage, while OG Scotty ends up buffing quick card crit damage. So realistically speaking, it means kind of 4 of her 5 cards are going to have the capability of doing some good damage. Her second skill here increases her own critical star absorption for 1 turn, increases her critical damage for 1 turn of up to 100%, and then a self on attack buff that inflicts defense down to the enemy whenever she critical attacks. That's going to be somewhat the issue with her, is getting the crit stars on her. But again, due to the fact she is a quick caster, you maybe have that capability in the bag. And you'll see here that we also end up having a star bomb to help with that. She's also going to have the potential to reduce one ally's skill cooldown by 1, giving her kind of some niche uses for skill reduction. But unfortunately, I believe the devs absolutely designed her with that in mind. As you can see, the 7-turn cooldown on the first skill, while the second skill only has 5. The third skill here also is 7. So they kept her cooldowns high to incentivize you to use this on her anyways. This is going to be a 50% charge skill here, though, which is really, really solid for her. Again, that's going to help her kind of keep keel with the other like single target casters that are out there. And then, like we already mentioned, the crit star bomb to help her. Gets territory creation, item construction, and basically her own unique stars per turn passive. All of it pretty decent. And then a noble phantasm that is 10 hit single target quick. It will reduce one enemy's quick resistance by 20% for 3 turns activating first. This is nice. This means regardless of whether or not you are farming up against a 1/1/1 type of node, God forbid, doing a raid like Barbatos, or again, maybe just into the future here, kind of looking towards a challenge environment that you might find a need for her in, that regardless, she will get stronger as she hits them multiple times, and regardless, still deal more damage and more refund due to having this first. So a really, really nice effect there. She'll then deal damage to them and deals extra, super effective damage to demonic enemies. Definitely a nice niche for her to have, as you will definitely see there are quite a few assassin demonic enemies. So this really works out in Izumo's favor, and it's one of the reasons that I do like her as a unit. Still, the obvious sort of thing to pay attention to is how does Quick turn out into the future on JP. I am bullish. I hope that they will in the future actually manage to have some good new Quick units kind of coming out to help support Quick. And I do think Izumo will hold up really well if they do that. So again, I do think she is worthy of consideration. Next up here, we have Oki-tan, aka Oki to Alter. Oki-tan, man, she has come a long way at this point. Basically, when Oki-tan first comes out in Gouda 3, she's not in the best situation. And realistically speaking, you had somewhat of a monster in the alter ego category. So Oki-tan is AoE Buster alter ego. And Kiara kind of comes around and has just always been strong and just keeps getting upgrades, much to Oki-tan's, I'm trying to think of the opposite word of benefit here. But basically, at the end of the day, Oki-tan needed some love. And it just got even more kind of interesting when Oki-tan Saber, the summer variant, came out. As I, said back then that Oki-tan Saber was AoE, she was quick, she was a Black Grail looper, and I said, to me, this is all the things that Oki-tan, the original, wanted to be. Sure enough, I think the devs even realized that, as that's kind of what they did. When Oki-tan Saber came out, they ended up going back and buffing Okita and Oki-tan, the originals, kind of with parts from Oki-tan's kit. So, Oki-tan is, as I said, Buster AoE, but she does have double Buster, double Quick, and that is going to pay a little bit of an attention here. As you can see, she does have a 3-hit Quick NP. Her first skill here has had its upgrade, and now will basically give it Quick and Buster performance of 3 turns by 30%, while also adding a sky attribute niche for 3 turns of an additional 30%. Again, this is all on a 6-turn cooldown, so pay attention to that. Her second skill has also had its upgrade, and basically now is a 30% charge skill with 500% star absorption, but will also now increase her own attack for 3 times 3 turns by 20%. I have a bone to pick with this one, and that's that you put a times limitation on an SSR that has never really been the strongest. What the hell, Lasengel? You absolutely did not need to limit this. This is a stupid limitation. But still, this is also on a 6-turn cooldown and thus can be double stacked. The third skill here has also had its upgrade and increases her own NP damage for 3 turns now, basically up from the 1 turn that it used to be, and then adds an overcharge effect for her own NP for 2 stages 1 time over 3 turns, with giving her an evasion of, instead of 1 attack, 2 attacks over 3 turns. Definitely a nice skill, also on a 5-turn cooldown, allowing you to quickly and easily double stack this as of turns 1 and 2 in a 3-turn cadence. Because again, this second skill, having the 30% charge, is going to allow you to work with a double coin Skya comp. So, as you get to the NP, it is a 7-hit Buster AoE NP. You can see how, looking at this, it kind of seemingly would have made decent sense to make her quick back then. Deals damage to all enemies, reduces their Buster resistance for 3 turns by 30% after the damage, so at least follow-up damage with her is going to be really good. So, Okitan is a unit that started out not in a good place. Okitan got a lot of buffs, and then Okitan got the best buff of them all. The Buster meta. Koyan, Skya, and Oberon have helped Okitan more than any of her other buffs have, and that has absolutely turned Okitan into a good unit. She's still in a good position, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Tiamat in comparison to her. Tiamat has come out, is AoE, an alter ego, and is a Buster unit. And she deals so much damage. Certainly, if you like Okitan, you will not regret having Okitan, and you can still deal a ton of damage having Okitan. That being said, it's not really a fair playing field since Tiamat has the ability to touch Black Grail, which in combination with Oberon just results in way too much damage. At this point in the game, Tiamat herself ends up actually out-damaging even some Knight classes in some cases against certain enemies. So, to me, Tiamat is one of the upper echelon units at this point, really pushing power creep in this game. We'll see kind of what happens into the future with stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Okitan end up getting, I don't know, yet another upgrade, like maybe an NP interlude. But we'll have to see as time goes on. Still, she's a good unit. She's in a solid place. But there is at least one other unit that is a monster in comparison to her. Ryoma Lancer is another interesting one. He has recently come out on NA. I've actually talked about him. When he first came out on JP, I think a lot of people looked at him and said, oh, he's got to require a, sort of third support in order to be able to loop. I don't think that was actually the best sort of criticism of him. There are a ton of other units out there in the game that require 3 supports in order to be able to loop. And he is a Black Grail looper, so I don't really understand that criticism as far as that goes. That being said, I actually find that Ryoma has a very interesting kit. I think a lot of people are going to look at him and say, oh, I have Melisson, or maybe I have like Melt Lancer or something like that. So he's got some stiff competition. I think a lot of people probably didn't roll for him as a result of that, but he's not a bad unit by any means. He increased the party's arts performance for 3 turns of 20%, kind of akin to his Rider form. He increased the party's critical damage by 30% as well for 3 turns, and overcharges the party's MP by 1 stage for 1 time over 3 turns. It actually does give him some interesting uses in the arts variant of the Invincible comp, but heck, even before Proto Merlin, you might still be able to get away with using him in an Invincible comp just because of having that overcharge. His second skill here increases his own charge by 50%, gives him buff removal resistance for 3 turns of 100%, and gives him debuff immunity for 3 turns. Debuff immunity is really strong. I always like buff removal resistance, but when it's only on one unit, this just means that this unit won't die if you get buff stripped, but everyone else probably will, so that's kind of my issue with it, but he's not the only unit to have that. His third skill here increases his own arts and buster performance for 3 turns and gains him critical stars every turn. Again, 30% on the steroid, 10 stars on each of that. I do think that his AoE NP, this is where he kind of struggles in the loop, is on its 3 hits. He increases his own defense first by 50% for 1 turn, though. Does give him some hard survivability. Well, they're really not hard, but like decently thick survivability there, to at least make sure that he's taking way less damage on the back end when it's the enemy's turn. He then deals damage to all enemies and increases his own NP damage for 3 turns by 20%. The good news here, this is a stacking effect. This will get stronger as he keeps looping, and certainly if you're using Oberon, it's really, really powerful, as this means that this 60% can end up translating into 120% if you activate Oberon's third skill on him on the 3rd turn. So again, I do think Sakamoto Ryoma, decent unit, probably gets away too much flack, but admittedly, pretty rough for all AoE Lancers right now in comparison to Melisson. Nobu Zerker here is another relatively rare unit. This is a single target Buster Berserker. I think Nobu Zerker's kit leaves a little bit to be desired, but this is a limited summer unit, so if you want to acquire her, you kind of gotta roll. That being said, she should have another banner in the next year on JP if I remember correctly, but it is what it is. She has 10k attack for a 4-star, which is actually very solid. She's got a triple Buster Gorilla deck here for popping off. The issue is getting Nobu to an NP and actually being able to kind of keep her alive. She has Buster performance for 3 turns of 20%, which isn't the strongest, but it is at least 3-turn duration, when in the face of the 1-turn evasion that she has. This does kind of offer a dilemma between more damage or living, and that is kind of the issue, but at least the steroid has multiple turns, so you can try to target the turn in which you actually want to evade for when you use this. Her second skill here is a miniature Merlin NP, as it's 5 turns of critical stars, HP for the party, and NP gauge for the party. Sadly, it's only a 3% NP gauge. The healing is not too much, so it really is why I call it a miniature Merlin NP. Got decent duration, but the amounts could stand to be upgraded. That being said, still not helping her squishiness too much. The third skill is Star Absorption by 3,000 for 1 turn. This isn't the 5,000 that we're used to seeing, but it should be enough to really have her soak some stars. Basically, sure hit for 1 turn and increasing her own attack on a burning battlefield for 3 turns. Sadly, she doesn't really have that, so you're going to be kind of relying on Mao Nobu. Although, again, she has had her NP interlude that changed things for her. So, progressing on to that, you can now see that it's a single target Buster NP that's 12 hits, deals damage to 1 enemy, and has a 500% chance to grant herself a burning battlefield buff for 3 turns. So, with that in mind, you can see she's going to have this, and basically you're going to want to trigger it, fire off the NP, and then be able to gain the extra additional effect. This skill is on a 4-turn cooldown, so getting back to it, not too difficult. And from there, you can see her NP deals super effective damage to divine enemies. So really, really strong anti-divine unit. In fact, kind of really solid at that. Especially in like raid environments and stuff like that, if you can manage to get her enough charge. That is her issue, is getting enough charge to actually fire off the NP and keeping her alive in the process. No one's going to doubt Mao Nobu's damage for a 4-star. It is really, really solid in the right circumstances. It is simply the survivability of a squishy berserker. Saito Hajime, I believe we already talked about earlier in the video. He is a decent single target art saber. Again, he has quite a bit of loopability. He does actually have a niche use in the very first 90++ node that you guys are going to get with Summer this year. But at the end of the day, you absolutely don't have to have him. And really, the whole reason a lot of people will roll for him is because he looks like Virgil. Okita J. Soji is Kind of another zero to hero type of situation. She starts out with a triple quick deck. She's AoE quick as far as our assassins go. And she just has a ton of demerits. She is a unit that I have criticized the devs for because they went overkill on the demerits for her. I want the devs to understand that, sure, a demerit here and there is not the end of the world, but a demerit here and there multiple times on every single skill is stupid, dumb, and bad design. It is unfun. No one likes that. No one wants to see one of their favorite characters end up saddled with all these demerits. I understand the tuberculosis type deal. I understand the jetpack type deal. I don't care. Bad design. Don't do this. Not fun. Still, the devs at least understand some of that, as they have given some leeway here. So she increases her own critical damage for 1 turn by 100%, which is always strong. She's a girl with big crits. Store absorption for 1 turn by 800, and unfortunately removes one of her latest defensive buffs. This one's actually pretty reasonably controllable, so I'm okay with it, I guess. But it is on a 4-turn cooldown, but still, again, you can see the demerits are stupid. Her second skill here is a hard evasion, which would get removed by that first skill, depending on how you use it, and ignore evasion for 1 turn, while increasing her NP damage for 3 turns. So, decent. I'm okay with this. I would like to see the sure hit maybe for 3 turns, but it is what it is. And again, 20% extra NP damage is always nice. The third skill here is where they gave her the upgrade. It starts out as an increase to her own quick performance for 3 turns by 50%. Strong. Multi-turn. Steroid. Really good. With a 500% chance to reduce her own defense by 20% every turn for 3 turns, starting with 10% on turn 1. Treat it as a buff so you cannot cleanse it. Max 50%. What the hell, Lasengel? Just makes her harder to use in carding situations. They at least come back in and give it a buff and say, you know what, this is now also a charge skill of 30%, and it will increase her own NP generation rate of 30%, turning Okita J Soji into a Black Grail Looper. I like that change. Good change. If you're gonna put a strong, stupid demerit on something, it better be worth the demerit. Now, this skill is. Prior to that, obviously for the 50% quick up, it's good, but like, God, that just felt like super annoying when you had to use it. The issue at play with Okita's NP is the fact that it will have a 60% chance to stun herself. Good news, though. She's going to deal damage to all enemies, remove their defensive buffs after the damage. I wish this were before, but it is what it is. And then have a 6% chance to stun herself. This is annoying if you're trying to use cards to loop. Thankfully now, due to the charge and NP gain situation, you don't need to as much. Prior to this, you absolutely did. So that helps things out quite a bit. The good news is, because this stun is always after the fact and it's 1 turn, this does not stun her into the next turn. It is just the turn in which she NPs, she will continue to be stunned. So you've got a 60% chance of this interrupting any Okita J Soji cards that you would try to use after her NP. That's annoying, but it's not the end of the world, and it's gone by the next turn. She will reduce her own reduce their defense for 30% for 3 turns after the damage goes out. So going up against the same unit, she gets stronger. Again, sorry, I almost said her own defense because the devs just got me in that mindset of everything is a demerit on this character. But again, she is in a much better spot now on JP compared to where she used to be. Dear God, devs, please just come back through, get rid of some of these demerits. They're not good. And then we have already talked about Mori. So again, you can see the rotational rate ups here as you've got Mao Nobu, basically Zerker Nobu and Mori on rate up, and then basically kind of going through with each of the SSRs and then pairings with the other 4 stars or potentially just the 3 stars. So an interesting way to handle it. Basically, Mori's on every single banner, and then you have various 4-star pairings, as you can see here, and then the same CEs from the first banner. With that, that is the end of Guda Guda. Basically, this was the Kill 'em Off campaign. It was the second one that we just went over here, so we don't have to go over that again. And then we end up with the Road to 7 Atlantis campaign here, which, again, this one's going to be somewhat of a doozy, but they actually didn't do some of the fights that they could have in this, so I think people were happy. We do have a summoning campaign here, though, that has quite a bit of units that we will need to talk about next time. Ice Queen, thank you for the 12 months. I'm sorry for the song request skips. I did catch at least one of them. I also skipped another one that was way too loud. Gaia, thank you for the 9 months if I didn't catch it earlier. Maz TF, thank you for the follow. Again, sorry guys, but whenever I'm doing the recordings there, I get really in on that and keep going. AK Killer, thank you for the 30 months. Gary MCC, thank you for the community gift sub. I do appreciate that. And Derzlini, thank you for the follow as well. I'm Kood, thank you for the 16 right there. Hellfire Dragon, thank you for the 29. And I believe that is all of you. Wait, that is Atlantis, not Olympus? Did we split Road to 7 into 5.1 and 5.2? I don't remember. Yes? Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to talk about that next time. But yeah, again, chat, the Barbatos raid should be out right now. Go do it. Have fun. That's going to be it for me. I'm going to be up tomorrow doing it. We'll do it with you guys tomorrow on stream. Just chill farm. Again, it's 500k HP assassin. Beware, he does debuff if you take the new Neo plug suit, as I like to call it, the new Mystic code. It has a cleanse on the middle skill, so that can help you out for some of that. So again, it's just up to you guys, but you guys should have plenty of time in order to be able to do it. Like I said, I'm gonna be back tomorrow. We're gonna end it here. Let me find somebody to love. I'm gonna send you guys over to Mr. Phaethon. Have a good one. And again, you guys plan to roll. May the courts be with you. Why is that raid not going through? Hold on. There we go. God, I can only type it right so many times in a row. Had to use literally my other computer to do that raid. But again, I will see you guys tomorrow. Go give Faye my love. Have a good one. Happy hunting.